Hey guys, welcome to another live show, another live Chino's Arsenal. Make sure you guys are liking the video. Oh, this is bad. Subscribing to the channel and getting into the chat, letting me know what you guys are thinking about this most recent Arsenal transfer news. Also, just let me know if I'm like glitching or anything. I restarted my computer right before we started just to try to make sure. But, sometimes it still is glitchy. So let me know. Listen, we have things to talk about, but I want to start off with pretty much what Errol said was that maybe the information on the Gyökeres stuff was not 100% correct yesterday. I just reported what I saw, but just for clarity and to, just at least bring it to light, I'm not like a source, so I know that my channel is called Chino's Arsenal, but I'm not claiming to be in the know. I saw a report from L'Équipe saying that Arsenal were making some sort of progress or advancing with Victor Gyökeres, and then Fabrizio Romano came out maybe like a couple hours later and said that that was not true. So we have an update on that. There's no real update on the striker situation. It's just stalled out with Gyökeres and Sesko. So I wanted to bring that up at first, just because I know like people are like, "Oh, well, you're lying." It's like, I'm not lying. I'm just saying what's out there. I try to make sure that they're actual outlets. I don't really report on anything that's coming from in the nose outside of Hand of Arsenal and maybe Team News and Ticks. So I apologize if you're like thought that 100% we're getting Gyökeres, but it just is what it is. I don't know what to tell you. But listen, Mosquera has made his decision on his future. There's also been some information from Ben Jacobs around Xavi Simmons. And then also Eze has made it pretty clear that he wants Arsenal. I don't think that that was under any sort of threat, but there were rumors at the end of or at the beginning of the window and also over the last couple of seasons around Spurs being really interested in him. And he doesn't want them. He wants us. So, they are crashing out on the timeline right now, Spurs fans, about this. And I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you. I know that they're in for Kudus and they're putting in bids for Kudus. And I don't know how you guys feel about, um, Kudus versus Eze. But I personally feel like if we get, the striker and Rodrigo and Eze, I'm not going to be fussed about us not getting Kudus. Kudus is a good player, but he was, I don't know. Like if he goes to Spurs, he goes to Spurs. I know some Arsenal fans will probably be disappointed because they really like him, but Eze to me just makes so much sense for us. So yeah, Eze is such a good player. Like, I don't know. I don't want to do this ad nauseum because I've already I think I've said quite a bit about how I feel about Eze and how I think he's going to fit in. And, as the days go by, the more excited I am about potentially getting this deal over the line. So I don't want to go too far and stuff and then have to like take back these words. But Fabrizio had said about 6 hours ago that after direct contact revealed on Monday, Eze has opened doors to Arsenal move in a clear way, whatever that means. We're opening doors to move in a clear way. He's just remixing and flipping it to get more clicks, I guess. He's open to joining Arsenal and attracted by the chance for his future. Arsenal are informed on the release clause details and more. So, yeah, I mean, we had gotten some of this information yesterday. I think it's just a matter of like how much Arsenal want to get it done for and, that kind of stuff. But it does feel like something that could potentially get done. So, yeah, I mean, he's made it clear he wants to come to Arsenal. I think Spurs have dropped their interest in him or, have at least cooled it down just ever so slightly. And so, it feels like we have pretty much a clear run at him. He wants to come. And I don't see any reason why we wouldn't go ahead and get this done. If we want to get in that third attacker, there would be no more perfect third option than him. No better clear option for the third attacker. Because remember, Fabrizio said yesterday that Arsenal are discussing like Madueke, but in a separate deal, Eze. So this is being confirmed by multiple people. It was also confirmed by Ornstein. Get it done. I don't see a reason why we wouldn't go ahead and get this done. I know we're waiting on Rodrigo's answer. He's been on the bench for Real Madrid a couple of times now, but also it was reported by, I think, Graham Bailey that maybe we shouldn't expect anything until they're out of the Club World Cup. And so he's probably not going to admit his, what he's, or at least like tell anybody what he wants to do until after they're out of the Club World Cup, which to me kind of makes sense because it's like if he's still holding out hope, if he turns around right now and says, well, I want out, and then somebody gets injured and then he has an opportunity, maybe Xabi won't give him the opportunity if he knows that he's not committed. So I think we just have to, you know, wait, and see with Rodrigo. But in the meantime, Eze is chilling. He's available. He wants the move. It makes sense. He makes sense for so many reasons. Can play in the 10, left 8, left wing, all these things. Been having conversations ad nauseum about where he'll play. I just think it makes sense for, I don't know how you guys feel, and I'd love to know in the chat, but Eze naturally plays on the left-hand side or floats to the left-hand side, kind of similarly to like Emil in a way, where how Emil kind of played like left center mid and also played left wing for us. And pretty much since Jack has left and we haven't really seen the same influence from Zinchenko, the left-hand side has been kind of dead. And that's no shade really to Rice, because I think he adds something on that left-hand side that's different. And, we know how he plays in the left 8. It works until it doesn't, right? And so I think it's imperative that Arsenal get some creativity on that left-hand side, or somebody that operates well on that side and can fit in quite well in Arteta's system, whether that's at left wing or left center mid, because we have so much creativity on that right-hand side. You have Odegaard, you have Ethan, then you have Saka also on that side. That's one of our most creative players. And then you have Max Dowman coming through. The left-hand side is Rice, Marino, and Martinelli and Trossard. If that's not an imbalance, I do not know what is. So that feels very imbalanced to me when it comes to creativity. And then what ends up happening is you're only going to be able to play one creative midfielder on the right at a time. You're still going to have a similar problem that you've had multiple seasons in a row now, where if you can only create off of one side, a team is just going to flood that side and make it really difficult for whether it's Odegaard and, Saka or whoever to actually do anything. And then when we try to get it to the left, they're not going to be able to create anything. So I think getting people, especially like Rodrigo and Eze, would make it so that the left-hand side was more similar to the right, and you have different options, and both of them can also play in central positions. So it just gives you so many more options. The left-hand side is dead when it comes to creativity, fluidity, balance. There's nothing going on that side. But the right, that's probably where we have the most, but it's being overused. So there's so many different ways that we could utilize Eze, whether that's playing for Odegaard, with Odegaard on the left-hand side, across from Saka. He's just the perfect option, I think, for us. So yeah. And like Keenan's saying, I just hope that Arteta can learn to rotate players. And I think what's happening now, especially in the fan base, when we're starting to get excited about Eze, we're trying to figure out who's not going to play. And I don't think any top team thinks about squad building in the way that Arsenal fans think about it. Somebody put out a really good video this morning about the way that Arsenal fans view squad depth, and I had retweeted it because although his example was Kai and Sesko, um, I feel like this happens in most of our positions. It's if Timber's there, that means that we need to start figuring out a way to get White out, because he's not going to want to be here if he's not starting. And, now White is crap and Timber's great and, all this kind of stuff, and it's like, oh, well, if Miles Lewis Skelly is here, what do we need Kala for? Like Kala shit, MLS is great. We don't, it's like now it's Do we need both of them? What's going on? Same thing is kind of happening now with Eze. It's like, well, Eze is coming in, so surely that means Odegaard has to be packing his bags. Nobody thinks like this but Arsenal fans. And a case in point for this is when PSG bought Kvaratskhelia, it was Arsenal fans that were mostly talking about, well, that must mean that Barcola is going to leave. He's been replaced. There's no space for him. Nobody thinks like that. It wasn't even the case. Like Barcola didn't never play again. He was still a really important part of their team. And in the Champions League, when we were bringing in Ben White, they were bringing in Barcola. You know, when now that Williams is coming in at Barcelona, do you think Barcelona fans are talking about what's going to happen to Rafinha? You know, now that Marmoush is here, does that mean that Doku is no longer an option at Man City or vice versa? We're the only club that thinks this way. Literally the only club that thinks this way. It's somebody has to come out. And maybe that's because Arteta doesn't rotate as much, but I would imagine as the options become better, he'll feel more comfortable. He hasn't I want to see, like, I'm really hoping that both Timber and White are available this season, mostly, because I think they're both fantastic and having both options is so useful to us. But how is he going to utilize each one to do different things? I think Timber is pretty much like 90%. He's damn near perfect. That one little bit that he's not maybe as good at White at is something that's really useful against deep blocks, and that's probably the passing, so or maybe the quality in the final third. And so there's different ways to use different players, and that doesn't mean that because Timber is special and we love him that there's no room for White to be a good option. And it also doesn't mean that Arteta should only use White when Timber is injured. You have a big squad. There should be times where we see, Saliba, Gabriel, Calafiori, and White, and Miles Lewis-Skelly and Timber are not used, not because they're not good or not because they're injured, but because we have the chance to actually rotate well. And so this will be the first time if Eze does come in that the next person up is not a kid or somebody that's just not good or not good, like not really starting level. So instead of having Emil or Fabio behind Odegaard or whoever else is playing left 8, you're going to have Eze. So that should implore and encourage Mikel to be a lot more proactive with rotation. Rotation does not mean all 11 players need to change. It could just be the case that instead of Odegaard starting, Eze starts, or instead of Zubamendi starting, Rice goes to the 6 and Eze starts at left 8 and Odegaard starts. Or, maybe it's, Martinelli just sits out for the day and Eze plays left wing. It doesn't mean that everybody has to come out, but if you have a better team next season and you have Rodrigo and Martinelli, you have a 1 year more experienced Ethan and Odegaard, you have a Rice and a Eze, and you have Rice that can also play 6 and Zubi. I'm going to expect this team to look more like other top teams that rotate and don't have a set 11 and bring those players in, keep them integrated in the team. And it's not necessarily about, oh, well, pack your shit. You're a bench player from now on, like you're never going to play again, but more a healthy rotation for a team that's been heavily reliant on about 13 players. And we're seeing the physical repercussions of that. And now we can actually we don't actually have to do that anymore. I've given Mikel a lot of grace on that in the past because some of our players just have not been that good. But again, Rodrigo, Eze, Sesko, Gyökeres, whoever it ends up being, a 1 year older, Ethan should give him that confidence to do the rotations without it meaning like actually being like an injury, if that makes sense. So yeah, let's see how he rotates Timber and White because Mikel usually doesn't do well in that regard. And it's if they're both fit, then I expect to see White also start games. You have 2 players that have had surgery in the last 12 months. So you really don't have any reason not to because you cannot afford to squander this level of like you have so much quality in your right back like area, that you can't squander it by misusing it because you're not comfortable moving things around. Both players have had surgery in the last 12 months, last 6 months maybe, no 12 months, let's say 12 months. So, if they're both fit, rotate them, you know? Use Kala sometimes. Kala has to be fit, but that doesn't mean that MLS is never gonna play there again. We should see some of that rotation come in. Also, somebody that I forgot, which we'll talk about in just a second, is Mosquera. Mosquera is a perfect example of somebody that should be integrated in and not only used in Carabao's or, used if Saliba gets a hamstring injury. There should be times where we see Mosquera plus Gabrielle or Saliba plus Mosquera, because these players are going to be playing lots of minutes. We're supposed to be going deep in multiple competitions. So it's going to be important for these players to be rotated outside of just injuries. Plus different options for different problems. Exactly. Our defense is so solid right now. If Timber and White are out, Mosquera can chip in. Rotation also means subbing players with 20 minutes to go when we are 3-0 up. Exactly. Having better attackers, and being more adventurous in attack will mean that hopefully we score more goals. And so we put games away a lot earlier. If that's the case, like at the back end of the 2023-2024 season when we were blowing teams out, we don't have to see Saka and Odegaard and, Saliba and Gabrielle and these guys play full 90s when we're up 3-0. That's a perfect opportunity to bring in an Ethan. That's a perfect opportunity to bring in Eze, or maybe you started Eze and then you can bring Rice in. We'll finally, hopefully, have those opportunities to do that. And I think Arteta will be maybe not under pressure, but I think a lot of us will be watching very closely to see how he deals with these situations. We don't get good enough quality squad depth, then panic when players in our starting 11 get injured or are unavailable, like Party against PSG. Remember when Gilberto, Vieira, and Edu in the same team, they all played major roles, and they did. And I don't think there was this like, yeah, well, Edu, pack your shit, man. We don't need you now because we have Gilberto here now. Like, we don't think like an elite side. And maybe that's because we haven't been a top or elite side in a very long time, but good teams encourage having a big group of good players. Of course, we have our favorites and, you have certain players in your team that you really like to see, but there's not this like pushback against having multiple good players that play in the same positions and the idea that they can all exist in one squad without there being some sort of contention or, you got to get this guy out. Let me pack his shit. Like, no, it doesn't need to be that, so I'm very excited to see how this unfolds because even beyond if you were to get Eze in, beyond the Rice, Subamendi, Odegaard, Eze, big four type of situation that you'll have a 1 year, probably more acclimatized Marino. I'm going on the positive side of this and hoping that, second year Marino is much more effective in midfield than first year Marino. You're going to have a Norgard, a really experienced player at DM, and you're also going to have a 1 year older and 1 year wiser, super talented Ethan Nwaneri. So our squad depth in midfield is starting to look a lot more like a top side, in my opinion. Simply the signing of Eze does so much for us in terms of depth, attacking quality. We cannot fumble this. Right. We cannot fumble this. It's right there. It's so close. He wants us. We want him. We know all the situation in terms of how much we're going to have to pay, all this kind of stuff. We're in contact now with Crystal Palace. Get it done. Wish this didn't need to be said, but I hope fans give Mosquera time. Physically is top tier, but technically he is lacking, like Gabrielle early on, but I don't want to see any bozo chat from our fans. Let's talk about Mosquera now. So Mosquera, over the last couple of days, and I kind of just hand waved this off because I didn't necessarily feel as though this was like something that we need to be worried about, but once we put in the first bid, which was like a cursory bid to kind of get negotiations flowing, Valencia rejected that first bid and then offered Mosquera a new renewal. They offered him a new deal, to try to entice him to stay. And then also if he signs a new deal, even if they want to sell him, they can ask for more. Um, and the reports coming out of Spain, which again, we've been a part of the Spanish media toxicity and telenovela over the last 6 months. You know, we know how it goes. It starts to spin and they start to tell their own stories without context or removing key information. And so over the last couple of days, it's been, oh, he's going to really hear them out. He's being offered a new deal. But they kept leaving out the part about he's pretty much sold on Arsenal. So this really doesn't mean anything. And Fabrizio had said on one of his YouTube channels not to worry about it because, you know, Arsenal fans are getting like, you know, nervous about it, but there's nothing to worry about. And that's pretty much been, you know, confirmed today with Mosquera basically telling them to talk to Arsenal because I want to go. So our second bid will go in and we'll find some sort of agreement. So Christian Mosquera plan remains clear. He wants to join Arsenal. Arsenal's project, despite new contract proposal from Valencia, full focus on negotiations with Arsenal as personal terms are agreed. New bid will be needed after the opening one of 14 million euros was rejected. And so, sorry, my nose is kind of stuffed up. So if I sound like it's because I am. So I apologize, but there really wasn't anything to worry about. And so going back to what, you know, Victor was saying about, let's see, excuse me, I'm sorry. Um, Going back to what Victor was saying, probably needs a little bit of work technically. And I do agree with the sentiment around Gabrielle. And Gabrielle was mostly called a bozo because he was an unknown kind of talent that didn't have the PR behind him and came in at 22. And while he was working through the kinks of being a young player, every mistake that he made was ticked with the bozo kind of like tick. Bozo, 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 right? And so now people are pretending like he cut out the bozo part. I don't like this narrative about he cut out the bozo, you know, the bozo moments, and now he's this world class defender. No, it's probably just the fact that he probably got to his prime. And when he was 22, not only was he playing with one of the worst iterations of an Arsenal back line, but he was 20 fucking two. And when you're 22 coming into a new league, it just depends. If you have the PR behind you and you're well liked and everybody has agreed that you're the future, your mistakes don't get stamped with the bozo approval. They get stamped with young player learning his trade. But Gabriel didn't get that because when he came in, he didn't get this, he wasn't the Saliba treatment. You know, and that's not to shade Saliba, but he had to learn the hard way in front of under Premier League lights at a club that was struggling very badly, where we had the likes of Pablo Mari and kind of like a kind of, you know, suspect David Luiz at times and these Socrateses and shit. And instead of just saying young player, you know, from probably 22 to 24, a young player that was learning his trade, we decided that every time that he made a mistake, he was a bozo. And so maybe we are learn our lesson and not cave to what rivals are saying, because rivals are going to try to paint your players in a negative light, especially new young players that they probably wanted. Remember, Manchester United wanted him and so did Everton. And so now it's like we have a chance to like not do the thing where we bend over to rivals when a young player is going through the normal ups and downs of acclimatizing to a new league and a new way of life when you're playing for a team that's being watched by millions of people, you know. So not like Valencia is not being watched, but it's different when you play for Arsenal. So we don't have to mark every single time he makes a mistake as a bozo mistake. We don't have to pretend like, you know, we need to bend over to rivals and start calling him crap because maybe he doesn't hit the ground running. But the only way that he's going to learn is by making those mistakes. And our defense, in my opinion, is good enough to carry somebody that's going to make the odd mistake. You know, I trust the likes of Saliba, Gabriel, whoever he plays with, Timber, White, MLS, or Calafiori and Raya to be able to mitigate some of these mistakes by leading him in the right way. but there's no like you can't want young players to come in and want these types of players to play for us if you're not willing to go through, the little falls and scrapes on the knee when they're learning their trade. So we don't need to call him a bozo if he makes the inevitable little mistakes, because it's going to happen. And I agree with Victor 110%. And Tenna, thank you so much for your super chat. Says Diddy is a free man before Arsenal sign a trucker. I don't know what a trucker is. Maybe you mean a striker. Definitely not going to comment on the Diddy stuff. But thank you so much for your super chat. We'll probably sign a striker soon. I'm not too worried about it just yet. Need a couple of probably need something to shake, or hopefully maybe we switch directions if RB Leipzig or keep playing around. So we'll see. We'll see. Exactly, Jess. Social media is extremely toxic right now, so we have to protect our young players better. Twitter bots will do anything for clicks, so we can't jump on the hate train, give players time. I mean, I just feel like Arsenal fans are kind of like maybe the quickest to start turning on their players if things don't go perfect. And I don't know if they're in shared group chats and then the heat gets on and then they kind of just, yeah, he's crap, just to get rivals off of their back or something like that. But I know like the term is like twerking for rivals, but you know, Gabriel was never a bozo. He was just young. I don't know, um, other players that we had, like Saliba, didn't have to, get the baptism of fire. Like he was playing in France, in low kind of like stress situations for teams that, were not under the spotlight. And Gabriel didn't have that. Like he didn't get loaned back to Lille. He had to come in and play with some really bad players in a really tough time. He's technically the first player of this project that was actually bought for the future of this project. And so we didn't give him grace, so I feel like Mosquera, we can give him grace, can't we? Keenan says Mosquera at 18 million and Madweki at 25 or must up. Keenan, you lost me. You're losing me. You're losing me. You're losing me. I know Madweki is an elite, but at that price, if he's willing to be a depth player, I think we must get it done. I saw Ben Jacobs talking about 45 million plus for Madweki. So 25 million, I don't know where you're pulling that price from, but I saw from Ben Jacobs Madweki was going to be more than that. So excuse me, almost double. At that fee, you got to go get a Malik Fofana. At that fee, you got to go get anything else, than Madweki. Let's see. I'm just checking something really quick. Okay. Let's see. I don't condone anyone who personally attacks our players, the manager and the board against their families, but I'm also critical if they aren't providing for our club. And 100%, like, I'm not saying that there's no room to be critical. I'm just saying that when you give Gabriel a bozo tag when he's 22 and learning his trade at Arsenal under one of the worst defenses I've ever seen assembled at Arsenal, what you're doing is you're setting him up for a situation where even at 27, where he's been one of the best center backs in the world, people are still turning a blind eye to his performances and not giving him the credit where credit is due. The bozo tag is a very heavy tag to take. And so there was never a point in time where I felt like Gabriel was playing against us or we needed to get rid of him. He was just making mistakes amongst times where he looked like a very promising young player and then grew into this monster that we have now. When he basically around 25, 26, we started seeing a different Gabrielle. But is that not the time that you hit your prime? You start hitting your prime around 25, 26. So he had a normal progression of a player, but it's the context around it and the kind of like labeling on him that I feel like is making it where Arsenal fans are still questioning whether, we could do better or, they're not really, propping him the way that we prop Saliba and, people that can see it clearly. I feel like feel confident saying that Gabriel is a world-class center back. He is, and it's just such a weird one because I just feel like we were in a difficult time and he was learning on the job and we were very quick to, he's a fucking bozo, and I don't really think he is. Um, I don't think Madueke will be willing to be a depth player. The heat, as you call it, comes with the territory of a top team and is expected to win. I don't support toxicity, but if you don't want pressure, play for another team. I don't think there's anybody that's shying away from the pressure. If you're saying that, Gabrielle never shied away from the pressure. I just think even if players, there's a way to be critical, and there was just the context was removed around Gabrielle. I have to just be honest. It was very, rivals were calling him a bozo, so we chimed in, and now he's a world-class defender. And if you say that, people are like, no, he's not. Saliba's holding his hand, and we know that that's not true. So, and then the heat in terms of Mosquera has already he's not afraid to come in and compete against Saliba and Gabrielle. I don't think he's afraid of the heat. My issue is that just because players make mistakes doesn't mean we need to call them a bozo, I feel like when Gabriel makes a mistake at the end of the world, if Saliba literally gives the ball to a Real Madrid player and we get scored against, he's tired. It's just sometimes we have grace with certain players and we don't with others, and I'm not quite sure why that is. But of course, like, nobody was less scared of the heat than somebody coming to Arsenal when we're shit, like Gabrielle, or somebody like Mosquera, who is actually going to come to Arsenal knowing that we have the best center back pairing in the world and is not afraid to compete with them. So neither one of those players are afraid of the heat, but that doesn't relieve us from being able to discern between a player being a bozo or just making mistakes. It doesn't let us off the hook. It really doesn't. Would you sign Jeff Simmons? I feel like he would be classed and would be great alongside the likes of Odie, and Eze would be a player of personality. I really like, so Ben Jacobs, I know I'm seeing that my internet is maybe getting choppy here. I'm seeing it. Give me a second. Oh. I think I'm coming back a little bit. I'm watching it myself. Am I coming back now? It looks like yeah, okay, I can see it as well. Okay. So yeah, okay, we're good to go. So with Xavi Simmons, Ben Jacobs has said that Arsenal do have interest in in Xavi Simmons, but he doesn't want to get people's hopes up because the fee attached to it, it's an outside chance kind of thing, and what he said exactly was, let me actually pick it up so I'm not speaking out of turn. But he like, the summary is that Arsenal like him, but it's unlikely, mostly because of the fee. Arsenal really liked Xavi Simmons. It was a complicated deal that saw him go to Leipzig. The total outlay was 80 million and a guaranteed fee was 50 million. If he leaves now, much of the add-ons won't be paid. And so that complicates that he made that jump and they paid so much. So they're going to want a lot more because they're not going to get those add-ons, right? Because the add-ons or about 30 million. So essentially, if they sell him, like, I don't want to do the math because I'm shit at math and I don't want to expose that. But essentially, whatever it would take to get him is probably gonna be too much for Arsenal to have to pay, or the guaranteed fee is gonna be insane. So, as good of a player as he is, I think there's a reason why we're going after Eze and not him, and it probably doesn't have anything to do with Arsenal not rating him. I think he's a good player. I've advocated for him coming. Xavi Simons, Eze were 2 players that I was like, we should be looking at those 2 players, and he's 100% available. But Eze at the 68 million release clause that can be broken down into several payments feels a lot more doable than needing to probably play a big chunk up front to make RB Leipzig feel comfortable selling him 1 year after they bought him for a big fee. So, and you see how they're acting with Sesko, so they're not an easy selling team. They sell their players for big money. They're a good selling team, so they're not just going to give them away, so I feel that I would imagine that we've already looked at potentially doing this deal, and because we're looking at Eze, it's probably because we've kind of crossed him off the list or decided that this is something that we need to look away from. Now, in terms of, you saying like he would be good along the likes of Ode and Eze, I want as much quality in this team as possible. I want as much quality in this team as we can possibly get. That being said, I think once you buy Eze, you've kind of satisfied that need of somebody that plays left wing, can play left center mid, can play 10. He's pretty much the same player. You can argue amongst yourselves about the level of talent from both, but um these like I think at this stage you want to get the winger, and then you've gotten Eze that kind of satisfies this whole needing a Xavi and Eze, and then you move forward. But he's a really good player. It's just I think the fee attached. What are y'all doing? Can you stop? You're gonna give him an ear infection. Stop. Benz is just sitting there like licking Bex's ear and about to give him an ear infection. Our wingers, Saka, Eze, Ethan, Trossard, and Martinelli. Um, let's see. Keenan says Eze is more of a 10 in our system. Simmons is a pure 10. Could definitely buy both together. We could, but it doesn't. I don't want to say it's overkill, but I just don't see where the money is coming from, because I'm already trying to figure out where the money is coming from for Eze as well. Like they're about to spend 70 million or something like that on Rodrigo. Hopefully you're going to spend at least 70 million on the striker. You're going to spend 68 million, but broken down in payments for Eze. You've already spent 60 million on Zubi. Where are we getting this like 80 million or whatever for Xavi Simons? And I don't want to be the pathways person, but Ethan is definitely somebody that I think we need to take into consideration here. You will have like Ethan that can play the 10. You have Eze that plays the 10. You already have Odegaard. You bring in Rodrigo, he can also play 10. So it's kind of like, I get it, that I would love to just keep adding, but I don't really think, like that. I don't see that. I see Eze and Xavi Simons being looked at for the same reason, not necessarily together. So we would have to have 5 or 6 outgoings to balance the incomings. I'm hoping Berta is working that out. And there's also, with the 5 or 6 outgoings, we have to look at the players that are being sold. And we always do this, hey, can you stop? Not only is the sound disgusting, but you're going to give him an ear infection. So the outgoings, if you look at the players that we're trying to sell, none of them I think you can envision these big fees for, unless Berta is, casting spells on these teams. I'm going to have high expectations for him, but not unrealistic expectations at the same time. We're talking the likes of Sambi, Fabio Vieira, Zinchenko. Unless you're gonna sell a Martinelli or something like that, it's looking like, getting the players in that we're already looking at, Rodrigo, Eze, Sesko, that's already gonna be kind of like, a stretch. Um, so yeah, I think we're going to have outgoings in late July. We can't get them both. It's also just profile redundancy. And I get that it's like, but you just said, Jess, that you want to have all these options and it's not a big deal. But to like a certain extent, I think it's Eze or Xavi Simmons. And then you have Ethan, and then you have Odegaard, Ethan, and then you have Rice on the left and Eze on the left as well. Marino as like a backup. And then you're adding Rodrigo, which is adding creativity. I think we're, moving in the right direction. So let's see. Let's see. Our back four plus Calafiori, Rice, Zubi, Norgard, and Marino leaving the Etihad with a win is gonna piss off our rivals. How much do you think we realistically get if we sell Fabio, Sambi, Zinni? I'm trying to be as like, we always have these long lists. I see them on Twitter all the time, or they come in the chat where it's like we have these 8 people list and then we have these big fees, and then it ends up being the case that we just don't sell any of these players. And so Fabio, I think if we're lucky enough to have somebody come up with a fee and not try to give us a loan option, that the max we'll get is 20. I think for Sambi, we'll be lucky to get 10 if anybody wants to buy him. For Zinni, we'll probably get no more than 15. So you can do the math on that. And that's if we actually can sell them, because I wouldn't be surprised if Fabio gets another loan. I wouldn't be surprised if Sambi, somebody's like, well, I'll take him on a loan. And the types of places that you'd be able to sell him to are probably places that don't have a lot of money, or don't want to spend a lot of money on him, so yeah. Big Smoke, thank you so much for your super chat. I really appreciate it. It says, unpopular opinion, but if 70% of teams sit in a low block against us, then Eze should be starting at left center mid in 70% of those games. Right sets the bench. Now, see, here you go. Causing problems. Trying to bring smoke. I know your name is Big Smoke, but you're coming in here with the smoke now already. But I kind of get what you're saying in terms of, the 70% of teams, are going to sit back against us. But let's just see how it works out. I think that some of our problem against the deep blocks was breaking them down, and other parts of our deep block problems were that when we got chances, we had people up front that scuff chances and can't hit through the ball and miss easy chances, so there's a reason why Eze is coming in. And I don't want to be disingenuous and say that I think he's going to play some Marino role. You don't bring in Eze in his prime. He turned 27 the other day for him to pick up Fabio Vieira like minutes. So I think the one thing I will say is that when you start picking up players like Eze and they're in their prime and they play in some of these similar positions as some of your better players, I think what the club is saying is that they're ready to compete and they're not afraid to switch things up to get different results. And so whether that's Odegaard coming out for certain games or Rice coming out for certain games or Rice moving back into the 6 and Zubi not playing certain games, I'm okay with that, because I said earlier on in the window that the ideal formula would be a big 4, in my opinion, that all have different aspects to their game, but are really good at certain things. And we're really missing that ball carrier, that flair, especially on that left-hand side. So Eze adds that, but that opens up, because if we're trying to actually break down deep blocks and we want to keep teams penned in, or we're trying to chase, what you need is players that can break down blocks in different ways, which is either passing or dribbling or just X factor and bringing things out of nowhere. But you also have to have the ability to cover. You have to have the ability to push men forward without having to worry about getting hit on the break. And so I think Declan is actually maybe even a better option than Zubamendi would be in that scenario where Declan Rice sits in the 6 and helps sweep, and we can really push men forward because we can trust him to mop things up. So it's just kind of the situation where, because like is saying bench our player of the season, and I hear you because you guys know this is I love Declan Rice. I also love Odegaard. Those are my two of my favorite players in the team. That being said, they do not have all the answers to the questions that need to be answered. And so we have to be open to the idea that there are going to be games that don't suit them as much. And so there's nothing wrong with having top players that have different tools in their toolbox, but that doesn't mean that Rice is finished. And this is what I was saying earlier on in the show is that when we start talking about these scenarios, it's somebody is benched and somebody is a starter. And that's what we've been conditioned to think. But there'll be games where Rice is just the better option, or you want to have his mentality on the pitch, or you want to have somebody that is going to give us some more sturdiness or whatever. There may be maybe games where you don't want, like maybe you don't need Rice or Timber because you don't need your big defenders in, and you need maybe more technical ability. So you bring in the Whites and you bring in the Ezes. I don't know, but it's basically what we're talking about is we have Odegaard, who's the captain. We have Zubamendi, who's the prodigal son, the Basque son, the reincarnate of what Arteta wishes he was. And then you have Rice, our player of the season, and our marquee signing. And so it's difficult to see who steps out. But I think the mindset shift needs to be who's going to solve the problems in the game in which we're playing. And so also, like there's also scenarios where against deep blocks, we kind of just need a striker to put the ball in the back of the net. So let's see how it unfolds. I'm loving the conversations, and I don't necessarily love this player's done at the club, because I think it's like you don't believe that, you're just being negative, but I think it's going to be interesting, and it's also going to mean that no player can have an off day because there's going to be somebody on the bench ready to take your spot, you know. And if you're in a game and you just got done playing against Odegaard and Rice, and we take Odegaard and Rice and we bring in Eze and Ethan, you're shitting your fucking pants, So I'm thinking about it more from the positive angle of it than who's cooked, who's done, who's going to be, sold in Jan. I'm trying not to think about it that way because I don't think top teams think about it that way. But I hear you, Big Smoke. I get what you're trying to say. And 70%. And so, but there's also an argument to be made that it's not even about Rice hitting the bench. It's maybe he ends up playing the 6 in that scenario because we're pushing for goals. We don't need to build up if the team's just giving us the ball back. That's the thing. When we're playing against deep blocks, they just give us the ball back. We're just sitting at this on the halfway line, passing it sideways and backwards, when it'd be nice to be able to give it to somebody like Eze. He'd take the ball central, he'd take a couple men on and get a foul in the box or get a shot off or open up the lanes or whatever. So I think it's good conversations to have, but this is going to be the first time, if Eze gets over the line, that we're going to have 4 top quality midfielders available, because we've never had that. It's been Partey, Xhaka, Odegaard, and then Partey, Xhaka, Odegaard again, then Odegaard, Partey, Rice, and then Odegaard, Partey, Rice again. We've never had this under Mikel. So the more we talk about it, the more interesting it becomes. And the more I'm thinking that I think we're going to be thinking about it from a positive angle and less about get him out of the team. He's shit, John says, is Rice, Zubi, and Norgard playable? It's giving when we played Marino, like Trossard and Jorginho or Partey or whoever that was against Bournemouth. When we looked at it, it was like that could work, but then in real life, it was like that's horrendous. It was either Kai, Marino, and like Partey, or it was Kai or it was Marino, Trossard, and Partey, but it was just it was an eyesore. It made me want to gag. So, but I also think there's, a scenario where you can start games where you can rest Zubi and you can play like Norgard, Ethan, and Rice or Eze or something like that. The mixture has to kind of make sense. And I think you're going to want at least one of your starters in, and then you can switch out the other two. But I don't think you ever want to have a scenario where you have, unless you're playing a Carabao, where you have two of like the more backup-y players. Like our backup types players are like the Norgards and the Ethans and the Marinos. I don't think you want to see a scenario where you have two of them in. If you do, you want to be playing against low opposition. That being said, if we have to play that, if we have good attackers, it probably won't hurt us as much. So the biggest problem that we have is if there's any little like ding or, complication on any other line, the attack is not good enough to overcome it. So yeah. But Jagoon says, let Norgard sit and let Rice have more freedom to drive the ball. I think he said Zuby, though. I think he said Zuby, did he not? He said, John said Zuby, Rice, and Norgard. So it's just DM. So no, I would say, what could work is like I said, Rice, Norgard, and Ethan. And that's a midfield I would not be disappointed in, because I feel like the profiles make sense. You have a DM, you have a box to box, and you have like a more creative midfielder. That makes sense. But the Rice and Zuby makes sense if you have a 10. So you could play Rice and Zuby and Ethan, or Rice and Zuby and Eze. But the triple DM, it's giving eyesore. It's giving turn it off at the 45th minute. Oh, my bad. I thought it said Rice, Norgard, and Odegaard. Maybe when defending a lead. Yes. Don't be surprised when we sign Nani first before the striker, left wing, and Cam. Norgard is going to come in at the end of games and battle with fresh legs and close games out. He is also good enough to cover if Zuby gets a long-term injury. Unpopular opinion, I feel, or maybe more of like a in the middle warmish take. But I'm not worried about the Norgard signing. I'm not thinking, people are like, might as well have kept El Neni and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, well, no. Like Norgard is a very good player. Is he, world class or any of these things? No, I'm not going to go that far. But he is like, he's really good. So he's just older. So I'm not really worried about that signing at all. I'm not like excited, like chomping at the bit to see Norgard, but I'm like, I think it's going to be fine, and if you have like a Norgard, Odegaard, Rice midfield, or Norgard, Ethan, Rice midfield, or, maybe just, I don't know. I feel like the only maybe combination I'm not like chomping for really is like Norgard plus Marino, but it is what it is, guys. Like, I'm not really that worried about it. I think Norgard's going to be more than fine, but we'll see how it develops. Um, let's see. People that are freaking out about Norgard baffle me. What is so wrong about signing a captain of a top Premier League team for 10 million? We can make a starting 11 made up of CBs and DMs. We sure can. By the way, did you guys see Culture Cam's most recent live and then the clip that came out? Please tell me some of you guys saw that. I need to know if somebody else saw that video so you guys know what I'm talking about. It was so funny. So funny. He was like, because we're linked to Nani and we're linked to Eze. And he was saying like, and I hope everybody can take this in the jest in which it was given. But he said, make Arsenal black again. Like, 2 black signings. What is this? Like, when I watched Arsenal and they were good, they were black. Like, it was just, you have to watch it. As the way he delivered it was so funny. And then he was like, can Arsenal make a outfield team right now with black players plus the players that they're linked with? And no, we can't. And they were talking about McDeclan and Honorary, and it's like a really funny video. You guys should watch it if you didn't see it. And of course, it was made in jest. It's not like, we don't want these players if they're not black. But it was just so funny. But yeah, that was, yeah, it was just so funny. And um, Eze is gonna, if we were losing the streets, I think we'll get this, some of the streets back. Um, with with him for sure. Culture scams is funny sometimes. 100% agree, bro. We need to make Arsenal black again. I think maybe not wanting to go too deep into it, but we are definitely a Basque. We are a Basque, English, Brazilian side. With the players that are potentially coming in and the players that have already come in, that is very much the case. We are Basque, English, Brazilian. Could we use some more French? I would not be opposed to it. You guys know I really like Akliouche. I like that link. I'd love to bring him in. But I just want the players that we bring in to be good, you know. And that's just the end of it for me. Like, of course, like, the recipes are what they are and the heritage is what it is. And if we could replicate, that's fine. But I just want to win things, so I'm not really concerned. But we are 100%, like, when you look at the numbers and you look at where most of our players come from, Basque, Brazilian, English, you add like a Rodrigo to that, you add a Mosquera to that, and it just gets deeper, so you can watch it on, let's see, it's called, where I found it was Your Fresh TV Sport. And if you go to their reels, it's up there. I would like play it, but yeah, but it's Your Fresh TV Sport on Instagram. That's where that's where I found it. Um, let's see. Let's see. Arsenal has the richest cultural history. Nani and Sesko are not game changers. I actually disagree on the Sesko one, and I'll tell you why. Just because a player is not the finished article doesn't mean that they can't change the club. And we've seen multiple young players go to other teams across Europe and make huge differences in their teams. And these were not necessarily players that people were clamoring for. And there were also Arsenal fans that did not want those players when we were linked. We were linked to Desiree Doué. We were also linked to João Neves. And I remember plenty of Arsenal fans saying, I don't know who Desiree Doué is. He plays for Rennes. Who cares? He's not good enough. We need Premier League and proven players at this point. We need to win. We had people didn't want João Neves because he was too small. He's coming from the Portuguese league. What the fuck? Only for those two very young players, both 20, I believe. Or I think even Desiree Doué might be a little bit younger, to make a huge difference on a PSG side that had just lost Mbappe, Messi, and Neymar in a short period of time. So the idea that young players cannot change a team or make a big difference just because they're not the finished article, you see too many examples of that not being true. Some of our biggest game changers have been young players. So I don't really believe in this whole young player can't do anything thing. Who is spamming? Oh, Abdi, calm down. We heard you. Zubamendi announced tomorrow. We heard you. Guys, know when Zubamendi will be announced. It's just, we get it. Blaze says Desiree Doué was good at the Olympics, even if he didn't start a lot of games. And Sesko's had good performances in the Euros for Slovenia, and he's also had good performances for RB Leipzig. So it's just, of course, young players can make a difference to your team. I don't get why we feel like they need to be the finished article. They need to be the right profile, and we need to be able to integrate them and utilize them in the right way to change things, It's about finding the balance with youth, surrounding them with experience, they'll flourish. I'm actually more concerned about the profile, like almost like the profile plus the talent level coming together to me is more important than experience. I think experience is overrated, to be honest. I think you need a little bit of experience, but I think the right talent with the right manager and the right circumstances environment can be a lot more impactful than bringing in older players or experienced players. Um, and some of the best teams in the world right now are not older teams, you know? So it doesn't mean that they have no experience, but they're not buying players just because they have experience. They're buying the right players that have the right kind of profiles and talent levels. And that's what we need to be doing. We need to be buying players that fit the profile and the talent level that we need to be looking at, whether that's the projected talent level over the next like 12 to 48 months, 12 to 40, no, 12 to 24 months. That's what I meant, 12 to 24 months, or players that are already at a talent level that takes us up a level. That doesn't mean that they need to be, especially because when you look at the market, it's, Arsenal fans talk a big game about how we should be going after this player, this player, this player when they obviously know that those players are not available. If Isak were available, we'd probably go for him. He's not available. He's not leaving Newcastle. And when I say like he's either not available because he does not want to leave or they do not want to sell them, or if they put a price tag on him that makes it impossible for Arsenal to go get him. Um, so when people sit up there and they're like, we don't need to be going getting Cescos. We need the Isak type player. Yeah, well, if he was, 100 million or something like that, maybe we get him. But they're talking about over 100 million, 150, moving towards 200 million. You guys know we're not going to get that. So we need to get the next best thing, or, whatever, So yeah, I'm it's also about what's available. And I think when the ready-made talent is not there and it's not available, or it's difficult to get, you need to go for projected talent, or you need to be able to make an educated guess on a player's talent and how they will bet into your team and make you better over the next 12 to 24 months. That's what I would say. So, yeah. And players that are doing well and playing well in the top 5 leagues and then also playing in Champions League are not players that I feel like are incapable of making us better. I can understand when you're buying like Sambies from the Belgian league and they end up flopping or whatever, but we're literally talking about like Sesko, who plays in a top 5 league for a team that traditionally is in the top 4, plays in Champions League. Like, he's not some unknown guy. Every player is available, once you put the right money. Arsenal will never always scrap hunting, hence ending up with scrap players. I mean, is we don't have scrap players though, saying hence ending up with scrap players, always scrap hunting. Outside of maybe getting like a Jorginho or something that like that, our players that start for us are not scrap hunting. Spending 40 million on Timber is not scrap hunting. Paying 30 million for your goalkeeper is not scrap hunting. Calafiori is not a scrap. He was a luxury. Spending 40 million on another left back is not a scrap. We spent 100 million on Declan Rice. He's not a scrap. Zubamendi, one of the most sought after defensive mids, is not a scrap. Those are not scraps. So I think we put too much emphasis on players that come in to play a squad role and conveniently kind of ignore the fact that the majority of our players, the ones that we actually bank on, they're not scraps. They were not cheap. I don't really understand this comment. And then also, every player is available once you put the right money. There's also the Arsenal fans are really disingenuous, because if you spend almost 200 million on Isak because you can just slap the money down like that and you're just going to get him and Newcastle are going to bend over and give him to you. If the budget is then nothing left, then you guys will be crying about not getting a left wing. And then if Isak gets injured and you're still playing Havertz, but you're still watching Martinelli, then you guys would be, why do we spend all this money on an injury prone striker? So every player is like Saliba. Saka is not available for any fee. We know that. If Manchester City come up tomorrow with 200 million for Saka, we're not selling him. Let's not pretend. What are these little cute comments go around on the internet and people believe them, even though we've seen multiple times that they're not true. Every player is available if you just slap the money down. Do you really think if Manchester City came with 200 million for Saka today that we would give them our Mr. Arsenal? No, we wouldn't. We wouldn't. And it's just not going to happen. We'd have no center mid if we all we went for is Isak. Some Arsenal fans forget we bought Henri as a wing back at Juventus after we sold Anelka to Real Madrid, who was considered one of the best young talents. Later, he became our legend. When you think about that into like today, that is an incredibly risky move that I feel like we sold because I looked at it the other day. We sold Anelka for like 30 million euros, which at that time in like 1999 or whatever it was like late 90s, early 2000s. That's like 100 million in today's market. That's very expensive, you know. And we sold him to Real Madrid. He was almost like a Coutinho for us, like the Coutinho sell. You know, you sell, you're a good young player that you have a lot of like has a lot of, you know, clamoring around him, and then bring in somebody that's kind of on the obscurity or the outside of Juventus, not really reaching the heights, and then he becomes like your that's what the fuck I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Like that's believing in standing on business. That's what I'm talking about, that Arsenal are afraid to make risky moves or they don't trust themselves. It's they would never be able to do something like that because they wouldn't believe that they'd get it right. They wouldn't believe that they get it right. They don't believe like they would never be able to believe that if they sold one of their best players that they'd be able to bring in somebody on the obscurity of another side and make them into a superstar. Like, do you under like the actual like balls that you have to make a decision like that at that time? Bruh. So many things that we did during that time is like you wish that we could do those things now because they were big boy moves. Going to your biggest rival and taking their star center back on a free and nobody knowing about it is huge. We can, well, obviously, it would never happen in the modern game because fans are online and all that kind of stuff, but you just would never see it. You know, it's just, yeah, they were doing a madness. They really were. Like, I love it. Mitchell says people are disingenuous with Jokeris. To be honest, some projecting Sesko to be good, but not Jokeris. Why? I don't, but I feel like preference to Sesko and concern about maybe Jokeris is the same thing it's going back and forth. You know, I think people are doing the same thing on both sides. And the reality is that there's pros and cons to both, and neither one of them are perfect options. Um, but people are projecting Sesko to become one of the best players in the world, which is what you do when you go after young players. You know, when you go after young players, you're betting on talent. That's not anything new. It's the same thing you're doing with Mosquera, same thing with anybody that brings in a young player. They're projecting, you know, that the talent is going to grow into something special. Where Jokeris, he's more of like the finished article, but there's still red flags there. So I think what people want when they think of Sesko is that he actually has all the things that you would need in order to be a top 1 to 3 striker in the world. He just needs to hone the craft and to, you know, gain a little bit more experience, get more reps in. But with Jokeris, I don't think there's a way that he's going to become like a Harry Kane or a Lewandowski level striker, but he's good enough to impact us maybe enough if we get everything absolutely spot on to help us win things now. And so, yeah, I think but it really does is more based on getting absolutely everything else correct and Jokeris's goals and his gameplay to translate to the Prem, you know? So, the Jokeris thing is just I don't know how anybody could look at him and not see any red flags, but then I also don't think that we should just say, like, it's a certain thing that Sesko is gonna be Ibrahimovic because we know that not every young player reaches those heights, and that's the, you know, risk in young players. But yeah, Zitch says you heard it first. Christian Romero to Arsenal. Here we go. he couldn't lace Saliba or Gabriel's boots, and I wouldn't want him anywhere near Arsenal. If he was ever in the famous red and white, I would gag. Detective says Saliba, Gabriel, Rice, and Saka is our best players that want to win now, and they can't wait for Sesko to be a top striker, especially Saliba, since next season will be his last if trophyless again. Gyökeres will do well with the right players around him. He has a nose for goal with serious hunger to win. Where does Max Dowman fit when he is set to be a part of the first team? I just think he's going to play small minutes. I don't think we should. I think the constant talking about him and the constant comps and all that, and then big Arsenal creators projecting upon him is making people wonder where he's going to fit in. But I think we have to temper our expectations. He's going to be in the preseason tour, but then he's probably only going to be in the team for like if we have drastic injuries or for Carabao Cup games or something like that, and he's going to play with like the under 21s. I really do think we need to be, because I can already sense what's going to happen is because people are talking about him so much, they're kind of deciding that he's going to play this huge role. He's not. The way that Arsenal are building the squad, he's not going to play this huge role. Like he's not going to be like, oh, when Saka comes off, he's going to be coming in, So I think we need to like temper it down just a little bit. I know there's like also like an urgency or a fear around losing a player that is a Lamine Yamal type talent because we're not pushing him into the first team quick enough. But they need to find the right balance between giving him enough crumbs, like enough minutes to feel like he's being integrated, but also not rush it to the detriment of the player. And so that's up to the club to get it right. And this is like the thing with being a big club that's under pressure to win is that you also have these side missions of like these young players that you need to figure out how to integrate in. This is why like the Brightons and these teams can do it so easily because there's no pressure on them to win or win trophies. They can just focus on developing, but we have to develop these world-class talents, make sure we don't lose them while, integrating while we're trying to win. It's a lot, so they have to strike that right balance. They really do. Let's see. Just don't rate Romero. Okay, fair enough. I can't stand that guy. Dowman might be on the bench for a Carabao Cup game, but might not even play 1 minute. We really need to be careful. Arsenal fans love a Haalender, and I get it. And then they'll look at these clips of him playing against other young players and be like, yeah, he's ready. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. Relax. It's like hope for the best, kind of thing, but keep those expectations. Like you almost want the under promise and over deliver type of thing with this. That's kind of what you want to see. But I can already sense that people are going to be clamoring for this guy to be playing good minutes. And I'm just like, he's probably been spoken to, and he knows what his role will be if he's staying. So yeah, Dowman can go on loan at Palace for 6 years. I don't think people talk about Dowman. I don't think it's people talking about Dowman. Arteta speaks also about him last season in press conferences. It seems like he rates him more. I think he does rate him like very highly. But Arteta also talks a lot, and then his actions actually speak louder than his words. So even though he's speaking really highly about Dowman, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's just going to play this like bigger role. But let's actually see, what happens. And I'm just keeping my powder dry because I'm a little bit like young player, highly rated. We're going to feel the anxiety. We're going to want to press forward and, try to get him in the team. And I think it's important to get the balance right. That's all I'm really saying. Odegaard needs to sit the bench at least 10 league games this season. It will keep him sharp and hungry. And I kind of agree with this as well. I think it gets overlooked quite a bit that Odegaard has played, maybe not as many minutes as Saka, but he's played damn near the same amount. I think ever since he's been here, outside of the first season that he was here, he has basically played every minute of every game. And so him and Saka and Ben White and these players that have actually been here since probably the season where we finished 5th, you had 3 seasons on the bounce where you had no relief, essentially. That season where we finished fifth, the season where we first challenged, and then the season where we finished 2 points outside the Premier League title. Those 3 seasons were the ones where Ben White, Saka, and Odegaard had no rest. We were heavily reliant on our right-hand side. Martinelli has had a little bit of relief because, Trossard has been there, and also like Gabriel as well. Saliba didn't have that first season. So you're seeing those players break down a little bit. And so I would like to see Odegaard sit, like Keenan is saying. Also, like somebody like Rice that didn't play for us was doing something similar with West Ham, so those players need to be looked after. Dauman's play style needs man strength. He needs a few years because he ain't running past holding off Premier League players yet. And also, like, think about the way that once people adjusted to Ethan, how he was easier to defend towards the end of the season because they kind of figured him out that they could just kind of push him, if that makes sense. So, yeah. I think, I just would say I'm tempering my expectations. That's all. 15 in a Prem is a killer. People must know that surely he'll get his time, but to think he's ready now is madness to me. Maybe 2 years' time. Listen. I know that the club highly rate him. And so maybe I'm underrating him ever so slightly, but I'd rather underrate him and be pleasantly surprised than, overrate him and then be disappointed, because playing men's football is tough when you're small, so let's see. Odie just looked beat to shit last season and never fully recovered from the injury. And it's just multiple players. It's not just him. It's Rice was looking a little ropey, and also, Gabriel never didn't really show it, but I'm not surprised he got the hamstring injury. I think those hamstring injuries, whether they are, in your mind, a coaching problem or a training problem or just a football problem, needs to be looked at 100%. Let's see. We could have got both Gyökeres and Sesko, but we're stuck with Kai and Jesus due to their high, ridiculous ages, plus our top 2 earners. Only Saka and MLS weren't spoken about, but are a success. Any young player bigged up like Ethan, ESR, Nelson tend to flop. Why is Ethan in here? I don't know. I feel like maybe this is not what you meant, but there's definitely an undercurrent in this fan base that's a lot less excited about Ethan and/or is not really like, what is it about Ethan had way more hype around him like 3 years ago. Not 3 years ago. Sorry. Why am I saying 3 years ago? My brain is gone. Like 6 months ago. Around February, around the time he scored the goal against Brighton. That was a period of time where people wanted him starting over Odegaard. And they were spitting up blood when Arteta didn't play him, in Odegaard's position when he was injured. But now there just feels like, and I'm not saying 100% that's what you're saying, but there just feels like people have almost like, like Ethan, like, I don't want to talk about him anymore. Let's just, I'm surprised because after this season, I'm actually more excited about Ethan than I was before, because I actually thought he contributed a lot more than I expected him to. I was really impressed by his season. Now, MLS eclipsed him a little bit just because I think physically he was a little bit more ready for men's football. And once, like I said, the other teams adjusted to him, they realized that they can just kind of push him off the ball, and that became a little bit of an issue. And then I think, he played so many minutes more than he probably should have had to, maybe his stamina had kind of just ran out. But there is a period of time that I was so impressed with Ethan that now I'm thinking with more experience, with more training, he's only going to get better. Um, it's just I don't get it. I don't see a lot of people talking about him. I don't see people excited about his next season. They're not really. I don't really get it. I thought he did extremely well. And I'm definitely counting on him for next season. He's so good. I just watch his season review back. Like he was actually insane, and really helped us a lot in a time where we didn't have much quality up front. So I'm surprised that there's not as much buzz around Ethan as there was like at the beginning of last season, because now we've actually seen him play in the first team, and I don't feel like it was like a letdown. I actually think it was like a pleasant surprise that he was able to contribute as much as he did. Um, Ethan has a higher ceiling than Odegaard. Possibly. I think personally, I think it's Ethan's position to take. Um, I just think as long as Mikel is here, that's the profile he's going to go after for that position. And Ethan seems like the right type of player to. I don't buy into this idea that he's not creative. I just think that he's more confident in taking shots than Odegaard is. So he can create. He has a great cross on him. He's confident. He's a good ball striker. He has good movement. He has good footballing IQ. He can keep onto the ball. Like, I don't know. I don't know if that's what I don't think that's what Gunners was saying. I don't think he was saying that he was a flop. I just think he's saying that, the only players that succeed are the ones that are like lesser known from the academy. And he added Winieri in this flop group. But I do get there's a sense that like there's something underneath that I can't quite put my finger on, but there's just less excitement about Ethan than there was before. And I'm not quite sure why that is, because I thought he had a really good season. Maybe people don't, he had maybe too many down moments or something, but I thought he was great. We need Winieri to sign a contract. It's not a cookie cutter answer. It'll be different for everyone depending on physicality or like the physicality. Ethan has a lot more lateral mobility and close control. Odie is very one sided and tends to get stuck in patterns of play. I think Ethan has a broader toolkit than Odie. And you know what? I don't necessarily feel like that's, far fetched or anything like that. I really highly rate Ethan, so much so that even though Odegaard is like one of my favorite players, if not my favorite player in the team, that I'm fully prepared for Ethan to take that position sooner rather than later. I don't think it's going to take that long because Odegaard is 26, going to be 27. So I think the succession plan is right there for in the next 1 to 2 seasons for you to see that gradual switch. And I just don't think that we need to like muddy the water and buy something when Ethan to me is like a world-class talent, but maybe I overrate Ethan. But yeah, I don't know. I think he's good. There are some who are criminals that want to say I told you so regarding Ethan. He's not ready. If he was, he wouldn't be looked at a different 10 or Saka backup. He will be ready soon though. I mean, I think it's like we don't play with a number 10 though, really. Unless Arteta is going to change the system, probably not. But unless Arteta is going to go to a 4-2-3-1, we've been playing a 4-3-3 for about 4 seasons now. So it's strange to me that there's this idea that we're playing with these 10s, and now that we're bringing in Eze, that we're going to play with a 10 when we play with 2 8s and a 6, and we have been doing that for years now. So bringing in Eze has no real bearing, in my opinion, on Ethan because Ethan is Odegaard's backup. Eze would be an option on the left. Eze does not play right center mid. He doesn't. When he plays for England, he plays off of the left. When he plays for Crystal Palace, he plays off of the left, whether that's playing in the left half space from center midfield or from, that 10 position or playing left wing. So in our system, I don't see a reason or like a thing that makes it that Ethan is being moved to the side or being put down the order or down the pecking order because we're bringing in somebody that is more on the left. I think like what do you guys think we're changing the system and we're going to play a 4-2-3-1? I think it's a 4-3-3. And I'm not saying that it's hard to do that. I just don't think we are doing that. I don't. I think you're bringing in Rodrigo, you're bringing in a more left-sided, attack mid. You're trying to fix the left, There's nobody that you can bring in on the left-hand side to increase our creativity right now on that side. It's dead. There's no fluidity, there's no balance, there's no juice, there's no flair, there's no life, there's nothing. It's a graveyard, so Ethan is a good player, and so I'm not quite sure why Eze coming in means that Arteta doesn't rate Ethan because Ethan plays Odegaard's position and Eze will likely play left center mid. I don't really understand why he's coming in and he's going to play in Ethan's position. It makes sense to me. I hope Mosquera will be ready to replace Saliba in 2 years if we decide to leave for Madrid, which is tough enough in itself. Are we watching the same Yeri youth is class? I think he can play 8-10 on either flank. Yeah, I mean, I think I probably watched a different Ethan this season. I feel like we also don't practice what we preach or we don't stand on business. Like as a fan base, it's convenient to us, we prop up young players to try to get players that we don't like out of the team. But when it comes down to it, we really don't want them to play and we don't back them enough, when it really, outside of just wanting them to take somebody else's spot. And we preach about wanting Hale End players to come through and that we rate these young players, but we don't actually want to go through the peaks and troughs of having young players in our team. We want them in the team, but we want them to be perfect. And if they're not, then we want to stuff somebody else in that position with zero regard to how that's going to affect them. And so I just don't believe a lot of Arsenal fans actually stand on business when it comes to wanting young players in the team, wanting to invest in young players, wanting players like, our rivals get, and they're like, why don't we get Pan? Why don't we get so-and-so? Why don't we get these young players? Why weren't we in for Ostavo? You don't want those players in your team because you don't want to have to watch players have to actually fall down, scrape their knee, and for us to have to build them up. We want them to be done already. You want them to be done. Just say that, because no, Ethan is not perfect and he's still going to have another season of growing and maturing and getting that experience. But only somebody that just completely needs a new prescription for their eyeglasses and their contacts could not see the impact that he made on our season and how impressive he was. Eze will cover the left, Ethan Dowman cover the right. It's not that hard to understand. So much drama around depth. It's really that simple. In the Athletic podcast, Ornstein said Eze is viewed as a 8-10 and top left wing will come in if we sell one of our existing left wings. So we're going to have to sell, huh? Maybe it, Did y'all hear that? What fell down? Go check and make sure nobody's coming in to get me. If we have to actually sell one of our left wings, then I'm a little bit less confident we're going to get Rodrigo because I don't see Martinelli taking the bait and going to Saudi. So let's see. Enough of this weird Yeri talk. Outside of apart from signing Kelly, do you think we need another forward? Who's Kelly? I feel like we need to focus on midfield and defense, but I wouldn't mind another forward. Who's Kelly? Oh, you're talking about for the women. I was like, who is Kelly? Yeah, we need a fast forward. We need a transition threat. We need pace. I said we need to sign Salma Parawelu because she's on the transfer list at Barca, and that's who I would sign. And then in midfield, I think there's a natural progression away from some of our older players. Like you have Cooney Cross, you have Palova, you have Monum, you have players like that are younger, but we have our like Walties and our Littles. There's a natural progression away from some of those players, but I wouldn't mind, another creative midfielder, but I'm being greedy. We need a center back badly, and we need a backup goalkeeper for sure. Um, let's see. Havertz's wage is criminal, and the Midwecki links are very underwhelming. Dowman is better than him. Yeah, WSL. Yeah, we desperately need a center back, a world-class center back. I know Catley did a really good job, but I think moving forward, we need to go back to like somebody like Rafa. I'm still kind of wanting that type of person back. Backup goalkeeper, get rid of Zingsberger for good. We're bringing in Hines as fullback cover, so we're fine there. Like Emily and McCabe will be the starters, but you'll have Hines that can play on both sides. If you have something additional, you can bring in maybe a midfielder, but it is imperative that they get a fast forward in. They need to. They can replace Beth. I don't know if Beth is leaving or not, but Chloe is, in my opinion, better than her now. So you have Chloe, you have Russo, but you need to add speed. We have no speed in this team. So bring in a fast forward, please. I think Bayern will be in for Nelly. I can also see Dortmund or Milan coming in for him when Gittins Leao move on. It's summertime and some Arsenal fans want to panic and create another drama. Just enjoy the summer, and we panicked the first game of the season. Have you seen Hand of Arsenal stuff with Ryan, Real Madrid? I did see that. Listen, if you know, you know. There was a time where I was in the front lines fighting for I was on the front lines fighting for Raya. It was dark. I had to stand on business. Um, you know, I was being called everything, under the sun. And for about 2 months, it was tough, but then it became clear after the Luton game that Raya was better than Ramsdale. I know some people still are salty about it and have an agenda against Raya, and some of them were the ones that were pushing for Juan Garcia, not because they felt like we really needed a goalkeeper, but they just wanted to see Raya replaced like Ramsdale. They never really rated Ramsdale. They just liked the fact that he was a good time Charlie and was fun, and they liked his quirkiness. But in reality, every time that we had an important game, he had a cock up, So um, Ramsdale is where he is because of what he is talent wise. Um, he's Raya. Listen, he may not be your perfect archetype of a goalkeeper. I know the perfect archetype of a goalkeeper right now is Allison, but just because he's not the perfect archetype doesn't mean that he's not a really, really good goalkeeper. Real Madrid wanted him. We're looking at him, and he's ours, So I love Raya. It's like if you don't think he's good, then that's for you to not like him. I don't know. He saved us from some real embarrassment over the last 2 seasons, I'll tell you that. So and he's also the first goalkeeper in a long time that actually saves pens, so yeah. Who isn't better than Ramsdale? Even Alex Manager was better than Ramsdale. But I think at that stage, Foxy, it's like Ramsdale wasn't at a relegation side. He had been playing for Arsenal, and he was also in the England setup. And so the narrative around Ramsdale was that he was a good goalkeeper, and we were replacing him with this other guy. And, I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be honest. I just don't think the English media really appreciated the fact that this young English goalkeeper was being replaced by Raya, right after a season where, we could have won a title, So I get it that at this stage, it's like the hype around Ramsdale and the narrative around him has changed, but Ramsdale could be one of the worst goalkeepers you've ever seen, but Raya is also really, really good. And I think that's the most important part is not really about Ramsdale's level. Raya is really good. And I'm not sure why we need to like continue to like, legislate. Of course, is he Courtois level, at his like prime Courtois levels? No, but we have a couple of players that are probably just about that level below the top elite 1%. Um, and so we're hyper focused on improving that when we quite literally have an attack that couldn't hit a barn door. We have attackers that couldn't make other top six sides right now. So we have bigger fish to fry, not to use the term, but we quite literally have such gaping holes in this team that a goalkeeper that's probably not elite, but is on that next step below is probably not a priority to fix or change when we haven't touched the attack in a million fucking years, and that's my point, you know? Um, let's see. People even said Ramsdale was baby Allison. Disgusting. Martinelli development is stalling due to our patterns of play. His market value won't get any higher. If we don't sell him, we will all be crying next year when the bids are 30 million for him. I mean, I'm just wondering like, how this is going to play out because essentially what it sounds like is to get three attackers, we're going to need to sell somebody. And so if it was up to me, I would get the Eze deal done now. I would ensure that I brought in a level raising attacker, the versatile one first, and not, because what I don't want to happen is for Arsenal to wait too long on the Eze thing. Eze is like kind of like a sure thing. You have somebody that can do the left wing. So if we can't sell Martinelli, at least we got Eze, who we know can play left wing, but also does other things. I fear that like you know, I've already like kind of talked myself into this idea of like Eze being the versatile. So, if we don't sell Martinelli and we still have Eze and we get the striker, I feel like I would be really happy with that. But now it's like if we don't get the versatile attacker, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll be okay with not getting Eze if we can't sell Rodrigo, but then we haven't upgraded the attacking mid. And now I've talked myself into that idea and I want that bad now, so, because like, oh, like I know Odegaard, not Odegaard, I know Rodrigo can play number 10 in theory, but in reality, he's the left wing and he's coming in to play that. So essentially what we're talking about is we have the same three midfielders that we trust. You got to sell one of you got to sell somebody to get the three now because sorry, like we have to now because I've talked myself into this idea that we need Eze now, and now I don't want there to be a scenario where we don't get him because I know Arsenal are dead set on Rodrigo. So it's like ugh, because essentially like what you could do, and depending on who's interested in him, the perfect person to actually sell if we want to get all three is Trossard. Trossard is completely redundant at that stage if we get Eze because Eze plays the exact positions that he plays. I know like he also has the false nine, but we're buying a striker, so you're buying a striker. You have Havertz. You also can play Marino there now, who's probably a better option now than Trossard at the false nine. So you've really made Trossard redundant at that stage. You have Eze that's playing the left eight if we need, that's a much better option there. He can play left wing where you play. Like Trossard is redundant, baby. You got to sell Trossard then. You got to. You got to. Um, yeah. Victor says, gun to my head, I'm taking whatever scenario leads us to getting Rodrigo, even at the cost of Eze. Even though I love Eze, tough decisions, to be honest. Anyone is fine to me, though. That's the thing. That's the thing. I don't know if I feel that way, Victor. I feel like I've talked myself into the Eze thing so badly now that I can't have a scenario where we don't get him now. I can't. Like, it's not right. The right thing is what you're saying, but now I'm like not thinking straight anymore. And I'm like, okay, well, we need to go ahead and just get Eze, and then that will just be good enough. Um, let's see. I just thought it something so funny. Let's see if Villa come in for Martinelli. I was like, I don't know. It's like, let's see if I what I heard in my head is let's see if Martinelli enters the Villa. I have Love Island on the brain. I'm so sorry. Um, but yeah, I think Trossard ends up being more of the, redundancy there. If Eze does come in and Rodrigo also comes in, you get a striker. It would be a luxury to have Trossard, and I wouldn't want to kick him out the door. But if that meant that that's the only way that those things get done, then, because at least at the very, very, very like, we're just kind of comparing. Martinelli at least keeps you with some pace, and so everything that Trossard does well, I think is covered if you get those players. But the only thing that Rodrigo, Sesko to a certain extent, and Eze doesn't give you is speed, So I saw on Belgian paper that Trossard has not agreed fresh terms, but I mean, somebody said this earlier, and I don't know if I think it was Gunnar Talk on Twitter, not the Gunnar Talk TV, but a different one, was saying that he believes that these contract talks between Thomas and Trossard are kind of like Fugazi, like they're, on terms that they kind of know they won't say yes to, and then they can move them on, So they kind of knew that they'd offered Thomas something that he probably wouldn't say yes to. So, but they were on terms that that's the only terms that they would want them on if they stayed. So maybe with Trossard, we haven't really heard anything about his extension. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's Fugazi. Maybe, you know, we're trying to get him out the door, but somebody's going to have to hit the road because I've talked myself into striker Rodrigo Eze, and I feel like that's what I deserve, so bring. Make sure you guys are liking and subscribing. Arsenal should go for Eze and Rodrigo and a Gyökeres and stop buying players for the bench, but start buying players to compete in starting 11 and keep Party and buy Zubamendi, not Norgard. Yeah, I don't want to get into Party litigation again. It's all right, guys. I see it's very easy to see what anyone wants, what the goalkeeper wants. They've got nice hair, nice pair of solid CBs. People even overrate Czech because he had Chelsea parking the bus for him. I don't know. If you don't rate Raya, fair enough. I don't know what to tell you. Eze over Rodrigo, come on, behave. I mean, I just have talked myself into it. Now my emotions are involved now, so I'm not thinking straight. My head definitely says that you need to do the Rodrigo, but my heart is like, bring him home, so at least I'm honest about it. I'm not convincing you that Rodrigo is a lesser player than Eze. I've said multiple times that I think Rodrigo is better than Eze, but I just don't want. Yeah, I need both of them to come. Martinelli, somebody's gonna have to kick rocks. Sorry, the game is the game. Imagine knowing that you could have gotten Rodrigo and Eze and then still having to watch one of them run around. It would just be insult to injury. Boy won't rate anyone if they aren't a random Turkish wonder kid he scouted for 10 minutes. Very quiet on selling Trossard, but I think Arsenal is willing to sell Martinelli if a good buyer comes. I just need him not to dig his feet in. I need him to be greedy. If Saudi come in and they're like, we're going to pay you a shit ton of money and, we're going to change your life and then Arsenal are going to get like 50, 60 million for him. Do not dig your heels in, because I think Luis Diaz is going to stay at Liverpool because I saw earlier that they're trying to agree the fresh terms and they don't want to sell him to Saudi, so even though Saudi is like offering like 80 million or something like that, they don't really want to sell him. They want to keep him. So the next person up is Martinelli, so don't dig your heels in, boy. I like you. I do. You're a nice boy. And, I wish it could have worked out, but you cannot stand between us getting Rodrigo and Eze. I'm so sorry. 60 million for Martinelli is a good deal. Arsenal needs to know that we still need a very good bench, so we should buy both Eze and Rodrigo if possible. Do it for your family, Nelly. You look good in a white robe. Exactly. Do it for yourself. Do it for your family. Sell Nelly as he has some value still. If we put him on the bench, he won't be worth anything in a year. What's wrong with Norgard for most Arsenal fans? Actually, I rate him technically very good. It's just so much AMT. I think it's it's so much. It's intertwined with so many things. I think some Arsenal fans were not even into the idea that Zubimendi was coming to replace Party. I think there was a lot of kind of like pushback and a lack of acceptance that Zubimendi wasn't coming in to share time with Thomas Partey. I saw a lot of people, even big content creators, like that are really smart, and I know they know better than this, where I thought that they were going to share the position. You thought Zubimendi was coming in to share the position, come on. And then, he was offered something, and now he's gone, and Norgard is not a player that they watch a lot of. He's not like somebody that rivals talk about a lot, and they had just about bought into Zubimendi and Party together. Didn't really accept that Zubimendi was going to be the starter and or Party was going to be the backup. And now he's not even the backup. He's not even at the club anymore. So I think the Norgard thing really doesn't have much to do about Norgard. It's just really mostly about Party. And this whole like, well, we haven't gotten stronger, we've gotten weaker and all this, but the context around the Party thing is just not something that I really want to legislate again. He's no longer an Arsenal player, so we don't really need to worry about it anymore or really legislate it anymore. It's over, let's see. You said AFC stuff. The original, okay, so this is Team News and Ticks. The original thought was that Leipzig wanted 83 million euros. I think the structure is as complicated as the fee because I think that 83 million euros was all up front, which is essentially the release clause. If you want to break it down, Leipzig wanted more money. Arsenal always thought Leipzig would budge. Arsenal obviously don't want to go to that amount, and it's been stuck. It seems like a bit of an impasse. Leipzig's point of view is Arsenal haven't put their best foot forward. I think Arsenal's point of view is that there's no point with the numbers they're speaking. They're not putting any foot forward. From him being our preferred target, I would say is probably now looking unlikely. It's not off or dead, but it probably won't happen. And this is the thing. This is what I'm talking about when people are like, Arsenal are still trying to decide between the two. We've been far gone beyond trying to decide between the two. That was like 3 weeks ago. We're not trying to decide between the two. We've decided. We've been in constant negotiation with Leipzig, and it's stuck now because they want a certain fee that Arsenal are not willing to come up to. And again, you think about 83 million euros, and they want a lot of that up front. And they kind of want the release clause. They've reneged on the gentleman's agreement that was agreed upon between Sesko's agent, Sesko, and RB Leipzig. And so now Arsenal are looking at it like, and I would think about this the exact same way. Your client, this player I could have got him for 50 million last summer, and you're telling me you want 30 million more for fucking what? He hasn't scored more goals. You guys have been less good, so how has he jumped up an additional 30 million? Overnight, 20 to 30 million overnight, over 12 months, so they really thought that they were going to do a 100 million striker thing. Sesko was supposed to be sold and have like a bidding war on him, and Leipzig were going to get 100 million for him. That's what they were hoping. It has not happened because they've had a really bad season, and The teams haven't come to the table as they wish, so they're digging their heels in, and Arsenal know that there's not that much interest in him outside of us, and also that they need money. So Arsenal are not budging, they're not budging, and so we need to make a decision now. We need to make a decision now. Are we gonna leave them at the table, or are we going to stick around? And I definitely feel like if we can't get it down to 60 million, which is somebody was saying it was about a 10 million euro difference, which if you say 60 million is around like 70 million euros. So when you do the math, it is about a 10 million gap, which is whether it's euros or pounds. That's what Ben Jacobs said. If they're not willing to come to the table and negotiate and come down, and also on the terms about how much is going to be paid up front, we absolutely need to move in a different direction. We need to move in a different direction. He is a good player, but he's not somebody that you overpay for. I like Sesko. You guys know I've been down with the Sesko signing for a while now, but I'm also not stupid enough to like, oh, well, if we can't get Sesko, don't get anything else. We are not in a don't get anything else scenario. We're not, so we need to move in a different direction if this is how things are going. I would say if we haven't moved by the end of the week, then you would have had like 2 weeks left until preseason starts. You either need to make, some sort of deal with Sporting for Gyökeres, or you need to look at something else. I would say let's go see, what the terms are for, because this is why when people were like, oh, well, if Arsenal are not willing to pay 80 million euros for Sesko, why would they pay 80 million euros for Ekitike? It's because their valuations of the players are different. If we're going to end up having to pay that amount, go get the player that you value more. If you want to pay less, go get a player that's actually going to be sold for the amount that you're willing to pay. So either come up to the Ekitike, fee, or go down to somebody else. I would say though that I would be a little disappointed if we ended up going as low as Ollie Watkins. I know he's still on the table. I know he's still on the cards. I know he'd probably be in a better bracket in terms of fee. That is a much less impressive window to me. Going from Sesko Gyökeres to Ollie Watkins feels like settling, but we can't go with nothing, but the Sesko thing is it's giving Leipzig are mad because they're not getting what they wanted. They wanted to have 4 or 5 clubs clamoring. And I mean, Bayern went to go get that Wolfenmade guy instead. Like, Bayern's not coming to the table. Chelsea's not coming to the table. Liverpool's not coming to the table. Man United's not coming to the table. We're barely at the table. So you're about to lose out on anything, and, they need money, so I get why Arsenal have taken their time. I get why they've taken their time and why they've tried to negotiate it down, but they need to be willing to, Arsenal can easily, but there are rumors that yeah. I get why they've taken their time, but at some point you have to pivot. So, but do you guys see why I was saying that we shouldn't just give them what they want? Because they're asking for pretty much the release clause, and how much you have to pay up front is really significant. It's more important than the overall fee, because if you have to pay 80 something million up front, that really eats into your budget to do to other things. Of course, we've broken down the Zubamindi thing, and if we wanted to get Eze, we could break it down, but 80 million is a huge chunk. So if we're not prepared to do that, and that's not what we were prepared to do at the beginning of the window, and they're not willing to budge, we absolutely need to move in a different direction, and we should not just give them what they want. It's just ridiculous, so if this is true, Jagoon says it just doesn't make sense. Surely they see they're not in a good position here. I just think, some clubs are just not used to being in a position where they're not in control. How many times do you think RB Leipzig are not in control of their scenario? They've been selling their players for big fees for a while now, since they've been basically they've been formed. They've had almost like a proven method of bringing in these cheap players and being able to flip them for so much more. And so usually they're getting these big fees. And Cesco, anything like I feel like they're looking at it from they projected that Cesco was going to be a Holland like situation. They were going to be able to do their big one with this one. He is a six something, striker, something that everybody across Europe would want. And they've had a poor season and there's not enough teams at the table. And I think they're having a hard time coming to grips with the fact that their plan did not work. And now they're digging their heels in with Arsenal. And I don't think they've been in this situation a lot. So they can F off. He's not the finished article to be demanding 80 million if that figure is correct. If the striker position is such a priority, surely you don't settle for Watkins, who you could have gotten in Jan. The reason Sesko Gyökeres are still available is Liverpool are going for Isak, Chelsea bought Pedro, City have Holland and Marmoush, Spurs are a bitch, and United can't get either until we reject them. Fair enough. Klopp is probably waiting for Bayern or PSG to come in for Sesko. Bayern have already went for a different striker. They've already went for somebody else. They've gotten that Wolf Made guy, so the time is ticking. And, you probably need to be in a position where if you were going to sell your striker, you're going to be able to reinvest because you guys sucked last season, so you need to be able to bring in players. You can't really bring in players until you sell because that's your model. So I would leave them fucked. I'm not going to lie. Like I'm vindictive. So I would leave them fucked. I really would. And go in a different direction. They'd be calling my phone and they'd be getting my voicemail. You have reached the phone number, the phone of Jessica Black. Please leave a message in your name and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. I'd leave them on red, because we have other options that we can go for and we can't afford for this to be to get derailed and we don't get a striker. I know we will get a striker. Like I'm not thinking that we won't, but we also need to make sure that we get them in before preseason. So it's time to leave them on red as far as I'm concerned, unless they want to, come to the table. Facts, Berta, please pivot to Gyökeres now that Leipzig are pissing off. They shouldn't have played Sesko like a false nine, then genuine crooks. And there's maybe a world as well where we would have pivoted already to Gyökeres had Sporting not done the exact same thing with Gyökeres. Sporting have done essentially the exact same thing as Leipzig. They've had a player that they had a gentleman's agreement with, and now they want to sell for more. Gyökeres was supposed to go for 60 million, and now they were trying to push for a lot more. So I'm not quite sure like exactly where we're at where with that fee, and I'll look it up right now and see if they've come down, because I've stopped like super following the Gyökeres thing like that because it was getting depressing. I was like, gosh, they got this guy in jail. But we may have already pivoted to him had they had kept their gentleman's agreement, but it's hard to leverage the two against each other when both teams are being assholes, so now you have to maybe start looking at a different direction altogether. I mean, you could at least agree personal terms with Gyökeres. You couldn't even agree personal terms with Sesko. And I think also they want to be really respectful to Leipzig. And I think like Gyökeres is more likely to force his way out, where Sesko's kind of, well, okay, we'll just wait for something else to happen. And that's kind of unattractive as well, in my opinion. I feel as though if you're ready to go, pack your shit and say, I'm done, So he's kind of like, we're going to be respectful. It's like, all right, buddy, they haven't respected you, but you're going to be respectful to them. Well done. See how that works out for you in the future. I really do think Sesko is really good, but I think they're also, not really being as aggressive. Yeah, I don't. Gyökeres' agent included an option clause in his contract that allows him to demand 10% of the fee offered if Sporting reject a bid of 51 million. This is why they are refusing to sell him for less than release clause. The player could demand a fee from a bid. Yeah, that's dark. That's pretty dark. This whole thing with Gyökeres is dark, so and maybe that's why the Akliouche fee is also inflated because he's not worth 70 million euros. As much as I like him, he's one of my favorite players in Europe. I would love him at Arsenal, but 70 million euros for him is extraordinary when he's just probably worth just about 40, 45, so maybe these fees are inflated because there's huge agent fees involved, kind of like the Pepe deal. And I'm looking at his agent a little bit sideways, like, I think you might be scamming a little bit. This does not look, to me, this is like a little, like, I'm looking around it and I'm like, this looking a little like Raul, what's this? I've seen this before, so yeah, they're scamming. Feels like the agent and Sporting are both exploiting Gyökeres. This is crazy. Victor's agent is pushing so hard to get that 10%. Clock it. He wants that 10%. And this is, and Saint is saying that he's 27 soon. And so you take that all together and you realize that this is probably your client's last big move. When he goes to Arsenal, if that's where he ends up going, then this is the next time that you push him somewhere else is probably going to be not as big of a move, so he's trying to get that payout. Dark, it's looking dark for Gyökeres. It really is, because I think clubs need to push against these agents. I know some clubs don't have a problem with the agents. They don't, like City, they pay the big agent fees. They don't care. But I think, you have to limit their power by not caving to these demands, because this is not cool. This is not cute. 10% of anything over the release clause. That's a lot of fucking money. Let's do the math. Let's see. So if he gets 10%, okay, because I'm not really like, let me just do some quick math. I need to know. So you mean to tell me that if they sell him above the release clause for 70 million, he's getting 7 million? Am I doing the math right? 7 million? If they sell him for 70 million to us, that agent is getting 7 million for brokering that deal? Is that the math? That's fucked, man. That's a lot of money. But somebody was saying like industry standard is 10%. That's what Party was saying, industry standard. But that's a lot of money, So yeah, that's how 10% works. Okay, fine. Math was just not my thing. I'm sorry. Front three of Eze, Martinelli, and Saka is fine by me. Yeah, I read somewhere that it was 5 to 10 million. If Gyökeres goes for 100 million, then the agent gets 10 million. I got it now. Thanks. Sporting don't want 70 million. I don't know what they want now, because I don't see anything specifically about what they want. I just see the release clause. I see the gentleman's agreement. And so what do they want then? What do they want now? Because this is what frustrates me about having these conversations around, talking about what's happening, is that you can clearly see what's happening, but Arsenal fans are acting like Bird is just sitting on his hands. But these are our top two options, and we were expecting to pay about 60 million pounds for both. And now both fees are definitely inflated beyond that. So that's a lot. They want 80. So that's even more. That's extraordinary. That is extraordinary. Like, that's a lot, so if they're both at 80 million and we value both of them at about like 80 million euros, and we value both at about 70 million euros, that's a lot of money. Like 10 million is not chump change. It's not just to be thrown around. Like, and also it depends on how much they want up front. And to me, the Sesko wanting almost all of it up front is a non-starter. Like, you can't, like, we're not going to pay the release clause. So we'll be probably moving in a different direction. I can definitely see us moving in a different direction, or maybe Jokeris's situation changes because he really wants out, you know, um, and he's pushing and he's agitating a lot, so he might be the one that shakes loose. Sesko's not really pushing out, so I don't think we need to be like fighting for him anyway, like that. Like, if you're not going to advocate for yourself, then, you know, um, what are we going to do for you? We have shit to do. Um, let's see. So everyone is trying to piss us off equally. I want Sesko and Matoma for 100 million each. You can't touch my resolve. Hey Jess, why do I be getting notifications so late? I'm gonna have to rewatch this after live ends. I'm sorry. I don't know. I think YouTube is sometimes so crappy with the notifications, so I apologize for that. Why is every club agent we deal with a diva? The greed sickens me. Let's do more deals with Ajax. That was the most friendly, you know, nice, cutesy deal we've done for a player. There was no going into the media and calling us brokey. There was no, club president or whatever, like a loss, or, the president of West Ham coming out and talking shit about us and putting out sound bites to make us look stupid. They put out a nice, cute video for Timber and was like super it was just like very nice. Like, I want more of that. Everything else is just so like, no, you can't have this more. Da da da. Like, it's just Ajax, what do you have for me? Can't do this anymore. You know? I don't remember the Lissandro Martinez thing, but wasn't it just the case that we didn't meet the valuation and then Manchester United came in with more? I don't remember having like a big thing with them over Lissandro Martinez. I just remember us being in talks and then all of a sudden Man United swooped in and that was it. As I keep listening, I think we should pay the P's. I don't think there's an excuse now at this stage. I don't know. I feel that, if we start doing that, then we're trying to build a reputation in the market. And you don't build a reputation in the market by bending over when your valuation is significantly lower. I kind of get it that it's like just pay because we need a striker, but we also need to get a whole bunch of other stuff. We don't really have good players to sell. So yeah, I'd be willing to pivot in a different direction than, because again, paying the P's is, if it was just like 5 million or something like that, I could maybe understand. But we're talking about Leipzig is asking for almost the 85 million release clause. So paying 80 million up front, it's not like we're going to amortize that. That is going to take a big chunk out of our budget. So no, I wouldn't just pay the P's. Maybe if they were asking for 80 million, but could be broken down, then yes. But the release clause to me is just, that is going to impact our budget so much. We may not get a left wing or anything else. So Delap was like 30 million. Ajax and Brentford are chill. Heck, even Chelsea are the difficult when it comes to transfers. Let's see. Yeah, I remember Saga during Rice transfer. West Ham owners was really trying to create drama, which was so unprofessional from them. It was hell. It was like all the sound bites and basically was, this bid is, is disrespectful. And then all the rivals are, oh, Arsenal, they're so cheap, they're so broke. Oh, they're just, and I was just like, oh my God, I cannot wait for this to be fucking over. That was the worst saga we've ever been in. That was, and I thought the Awar one was really bad. And we were barely even in that shit. Like, it's just, nah. I mean, I like people being quiet. Arsenal came earlier for Lissandro, but it was the amount where we said, thank you very much for the offer, but we'd rather keep the player than start negotiating. That's kind of bad, but I think they, that's not as bad as what we've been through. But I forgot about that. And yeah, my bad. Our offer was not insulting. I don't think it was insulting either. But I think at that stage, they just wanted to sell him to Manchester United anyway. Or maybe they were upset that he was leaving. I don't remember. But they were much nicer the second time around with Timber, and we got the better players. So it kind of worked out, but I get what you're saying. Lookman, Sesko, Saka, Lookman linked for 43 million. Sulemana has joined. Replacement, he's going to move. I think simply advocating for a club just to pay the money is a very simplistic way of understanding the long-term implications for your reputation in the market for current and future negotiations. And it's kind of like the exact same thing that we shit on other clubs for doing, and it gets them into trouble where they can't do other things, you know? So I think that's kind of why I'm really against just giving them the money. I think, of course, we are scared that we won't get anything. And I understand the anxiety and the like, we need to win, we need to get a striker. We can't not get a striker. So just go ahead and pay so it can be over. Um, you know, we literally have Arsenal fans sending messages to Rodrigo, calling him everything in the book because he won't hurry up and make a decision because we're anxious about our window. Um, you know, but in the end of at the end of the day, like Arsenal need to stick to their valuations for players that, you know, they're not willing to go the length for, you know, and neither one of them, Gyökeres or Sesko, are players that I feel like Arsenal feel are like Declan Rice. You know, Declan Rice was a player that they felt they should play over the odds for because he was worth it. But Sesko and Gyökeres are definitely like our number 2 and number 3 option. Isak was the unicorn that we'd, you know, push the boat out for. If he was like more, you know, available within reach, you know, we're not going to pay 200 million for him, but um, these two are not that. So we kind of need to stick to our valuation a little bit, but I hear it. Charles Watts said Arteta wants a striker by the end of the week. I think we will know who we're choosing in the coming days. Rice was club defining. Yeah, these players are not club defining, in my opinion. So I get it. I totally understand it, you guys. You guys know I'm not somebody that, like, in a week or two, if we don't have a striker, I'm going to be panicking, you know? So I'm not saying that, you know, it's not concerning that we haven't really been able to, like, make any movements, but we really cannot be just giving Leipzig what they want. It's going to impact the rest of our window. And if our window is looking like a striker, Rodrigo, and maybe Eze, you know, we need to, you know, be smart about how we use our money. Also, I'm seeing a lot of people saying that Ollie Watkins would be fine. How would you guys feel about that? Like if the window was Rodrigo, Eze, Ollie Watkins, Zubamindi, Norgard, and Mosquera, and Kepa. How would you guys feel about that? Is that too disappointing at this stage? Like, am I underrating him? Is it just a name thing? Like, what do you guys think? And the only reason why I'm asking is because we are about 24 hours away from the Arsenal fan base saying that they've always rated Ollie Watkins and he's the best option. It's already happening, you know, so I'm just asking before, you know, before it becomes the popular opinion, what you guys actually think before we start coping, you know? So, because coping, it's coming, you know, the coping, it's happening, you know? So, it's there. Whew, it's happening. We are coping. That's for sure. I can't think of any club on earth that would ask for 83 million in one go as you were. I think that's talking about Sesko. It's just ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. And RB Leipzig they don't really want to sell Sesko, I think. I think they know that they need to sell him, or they're gonna, you know, they're begrudgingly selling him, but they had expected him to be £100 million kind of, or €100 million big sale, and it's not ending up being that. And so they're not happy. Watkins could be a good bridge between decent signing and a stopgap for Sesko Isak next season or season after. I prefer Sesko or Gyökeres, though. I'm going to say this right now, though. If we get Ollie Watkins and we don't get Sesko, that's it for Sesko. I feel like we need to look for the next best striker coming up. I don't ever want to see that name again if in the second season in a row, we end up not getting him. I'll be done with him after the summer, to be honest. I just hope Arsenal do not do the Arsenal thing and of getting Watkins. I wouldn't mind that. It's just a bit of a letdown, but Watkins isn't bad. I think he would do okay for us. He would be cheap, I think. If shit went wrong and we were not signing both Victor and Sesko, I won't be mad at getting Watkins, but we're not selling any of our wingers. If we end up with Watkins, we'll feel like Francis Jeffers. I think the information about our striker targets are very conflicted. I've seen news today about Manchester United also wanting Watkins. I mean, but they can't get anybody else. You know, they wanted Delap, they couldn't get Delap. Some of the striker options only really want probably Champions League because they've been in Champions League. So, you know, Watkins is available. You know, we know that Aston Villa have PSR, and if they're going to sell anybody, it might be Watkins. So, and he probably won't be super expensive either. So, of course, he's on their list. But again, I feel like a lot of what happens in the rest of the transfer window in regards to strikers is really dependent on what we do. Because, like somebody said earlier, Liverpool, I think they're looking at Ekitike / Isak if he does shake loose, which he's not. Chelsea have gotten Pedro and Delap. You know, Bayern have already gotten their striker. PSG probably are not getting one. You know, if they do, you know, we'll see. But the trickle down is going to happen after we pick who we pick. If we pick Sesko, then Ekitike goes somewhere else. Da, 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 da. If we pick Ekitike, then Sesko, you know, he maybe stays. So, and then Watkins could go to Manchester United because he'll wait. If he feels like there's a chance to go to Arsenal, Ollie Watkins is going to wait until the last minute of the transfer window. He is no different than Eze in the way that he wants to be an Arsenal player, you know, so yeah, you know, so we're kind of, I'm not saying like everything is about us, but everything is kind of about us right now. You know, whoever we choose, that'll be the ripple effect that'll allow these other players to go other places, I feel. What Arsenal will start the domino. People want Watkins, bro. We are not doing anything. The key is to secure Rodrigo and Eze. Zubi is apparently so. I mean, if we get Rodrigo and Eze, I think I'll like, you know, it's like there's nothing I can do if Ollie Watkins comes. You know, it's not like I'm going to stand at the front of Soba Realty training station and say, "Halt! You cannot come in." Like, I don't want you here. You know, but I'm not going to lie and sit here in a couple of weeks if we sign Ollie Watkins and say I always wanted him. You know, I just can't do that to you guys. You know, it's not truthful. I'll be very disappointed and let down. Please do not go that low. And trust and believe, if we get Ollie Watkins, I am expecting Eze and Rodrigo. I don't want to see nothing different. I don't want to see just Eze. I don't want to see just Rodrigo. I'm going to want both. Now, that for sure, I'll be on Berta's door saying, you're going to make sure you get Rodrigo and Eze, right? Because we ended up with Watkins. You know, so if we get those players, I'd be tempted to follow Ars again. The dream ends this window for me if we fuck it up. 100%. No said they wanted Watkins, though. The question was whether you'd be disappointed, and most of the chat said they were okay with it. I think there will be a collective like, oh, we're settling. You know, how much better is Watkins than what we have? Like, what's the levels? You know, because a lot of the Arsenal fan base has, you know, basically convinced themselves that Kai Havertz is one of the best strikers in the league. If you look at the numbers and you squint really hard, Kai is really, really good. That's, you know, and so it'd be really hard to upgrade upon him and all that shit, you know. So is Ollie Watkins like similar, equal to, like, what's, you know, how far down are we going here? You know, are we in the dumpster? Like what? You know, I'm looking at his FB ref now and I'm just like, you know, he had 16 goals last season and 8 assists. You know, I think in 38 matches, and then 1 goal and 4 assists in the Champions League. At one point, he had his chain snatched from John Duran. So, We have to remember that, but because he wasn't a starter. But I mean, Kai Havertz had what, 15 goals last season, or 12 and 8, but he got injured. Oh, I lied. He had 9 and 3. So he had like 12 GA, but he also got injured quite early. That needs to be said. But Ollie Watkins had 16 and 8. That's really good. Like Kai had 13 and 7, and his best season was last season. So um, I don't know. How much better is Ollie Watkins than Kai Havertz? What do you think? He's not a winger. Strikers tend to also last longer. He can still compete at the top level. We just won't get anything from him come the end of his contract, which we're already used to. At least he wouldn't get the yearly dunking on us anymore. Right. Silver linings. Reddicky is better than Watkins. Watkins just gives meh. I won't be happy, but please, guys, Watkins is not a bad player. But just like Jess said, I want Rodrigo and Eze and no going outs on the league. I miss the miss versus Newcastle versus Wolves. Any striker scores those. I think if Saudi take Nelly, will make the dominoes fall across Europe. Anyone is better than Kai, though. Marino should be ahead of Havertz on the center forward depth chart. It's just. It's just death. I'm just like, oh my gosh, Ollie Watkins. I want to, because he's gonna pull in the heartstrings and he's gonna say he's always been an Arsenal fan. He's gonna cry and it's gonna be great, but you're not who I wanted, So I cannot be brought in because you're, just like us, one of us. I can't. Then Watkins miss the sitter versus us as well. I think so. The bar is so low with our attack. Need a HOA update regarding strikers. Watkins had the jersey since he was 5. He's definitely an Arsenal fan. So that doesn't really matter to me, but in the end of the day, it's like a plus or like a nice, it's like, it's not even like a, gives any more points. It's just nice, if you're an Arsenal fan. It's not gonna change how I feel about the talent level, and he's 30, so it's just so come on, Sporting, bring your price down, come on. Stop being a ding ding, like, come on. It's just so this is what's so frustrating, guys, more than anything is we need a striker for so long, and it's just so almost like impossible for us to get one. There's so much friction and like it's just we tried to get one last summer, we didn't get it. Now was this summer and they're playing this nonsense. It's just like we moved silly. You can't bet on nothing yet. Stop being a ding ding. I mean, yeah, that's the only word I can say because if I say the other word, it's not a nice word, is it? We have been linked to this guy for 2 years. 2 years, one season wonder. Redigi getting hyped. Lookman is who we should go for. Strikers that have one good season in Italy are fake. So much for keeping good relations with Leipzig. Good fucking relations, Like, no more relations. I'm telling you right now, if we don't get him this season, I don't want him next season on principle. Like, I don't want to hear his name. I don't care if he becomes Ibrahimovic. I don't want to hear about him anymore. Tired, man. Like, Sesko is becoming like a, is becoming Benzema and them guys. Like, we're linked to Benzema again. Like, what? Nasty work. I think we will get Eze and Rodrigo. I'm actually optimistic about us getting those two. The striker, who knows? It could end up being anybody, It could end up being anybody at this stage. Do Kai and Odie spend their entire time together? Now, I know you guys don't care about this, but I care about this kind of stuff. They're best friends. They're literally best friends. They spend so much time together. When, because I know you probably saw the interview or whatever, Kepa said that he was talking to Odegaard and Kai Havertz about what it was like at Arsenal. They're always together. They're at the scene of the crime. Um, so yeah, Kai and Odie are like best friends. Oddly enough, Saliba and Tommy are like best friends. Um, I guess Timber and Saka are close, but I'm not 100% sure about that. Um, Declan is friends with everyone, you know. I'm sure that Spanish core is about to be Spanish as fuck. That Basque group, that Raya, Kepa, Marino, Mosquera, Zubamendi thing is gonna be thick as thieves, probably. But I could also see Zubamendi being friends with Odegaard as well. So let's see how it goes. But they're yeah. Not Rice, Odegaard and Kai are really close. And then Ben White, I think, lives really close to Kai. And so all of their like wives and all that are like close ish or whatever. And then Trossard is also close to Ben White and also friends with like the Kai group too. They're all pretty close. Maybe the trophies are the friends we made along the way. Oh my gosh. Maybe if they hated each other more, we would win. I don't know. I love the fact that Berta is making Arsenal look like the price of the transfer market because we are negotiating with different players in the same position. They have to bring their prices down. Samu and Fabio Vieira swap deal. Samu, like, I know who Samu is, and I think he's like a good young player, but come on. Nah, man. You know, like, I don't know. Everybody's talking about the Sesko thing now. I mean, is outrageous. Outrageous. And wanting almost all of it up front, they can kick rocks. You know, it's over. You know, that's actually genius. That's genius. What is it? Oh, yes. Samu? See, now you guys are thinking of like nonsense, like just things, just random. Like, do you think that we could swap like so and so for so and so? Like, what? Come on. You guys really want him? Okay, fine. You want him. Arsenal coming out with their own reality TV show at this point. And you know who would be front and center watching and giving you guys the updates on it every week? If they did a reality show, I'd definitely watch. I'm into the content. I love the players. Like, they're likable. I need them to start winning though. Is Team News and Ticks still reliable? Because this brother for me is the El Neni of In the Nose. I think he fell off. But remember, I was like, you need an exclusive. And then he came with the Eze stuff, and the Eze stuff ended up being true. So maybe he knows a little something, something. But the whole thing about the Leipzig thing, it kind of lines up with what Ben Jacobs said a week ago about there being a 10 million difference, 10 million euro difference. And that makes sense because we want to pay about 70 million euros and they want 80 million. But the part I think that's also missing is the fact that they want so much up front. And so we're at a standstill. And it's not like he said anything wild. I really think that makes a lot of sense. They've reneged on the gentleman's agreement. They want a lot more than what was originally expressed. I think they also feel good, like feel comfortable asking for that amount because Sesko is not agitating at all and he looks quite comfortable. Like he wants the move, but like not enough to make a fuss. So yeah, all eyes on Berta. I would be shook if Porto actually took that swap deal. Team News and Ticks fell off after the Rice deal. 80 million up front. They want quite a bit of it up front. And they're not coming off of that because if you're at 80 million and 70 million euros, there is a very easy in between point that you can get to. So I don't really understand why 80 million and 70 million would be such a difficult point to get to the middle of with add-ons and stuff like that if there wasn't something else in between. And it makes so much sense that if they want more up front and they want a lot of it up front, that we're not moving. I mean, getting to 10 million to figure out a way to make that work and make the deal work. It should not just be at a standstill, you know? And paying like teams pay like 10 million up front, 70, like, 20 million up front, like, things like that. 80 million up front or anything around there is tapping into your budget so badly that it's going to keep you from getting other things, so it's not realistic to get into that deal. It's just not realistic. And we should not encourage it, I don't think. Let's see. Really and truly should be about 60 million plus 20. Exactly. And I think that's what we thought we were doing, because 60 million pounds is like around 70 million euros. So I think that's what we were trying to do, but they're on nonsense. Like, Benjamin Sesko and his agent is very delusional, but I also think they believe in themselves. So they're like, well, if it doesn't happen this summer, we'll just do it next summer. There'll be people in line and all that kind of stuff. This is the difference between Gyökeres and Sesko is Gyökeres is desperate. He is absolutely desperate, so he's willing to not play. He's pushing, he's putting stuff out, like he's clearly agitating. But Sesko is comfy, so there's no reason for RB Leipzig to play ball. Would he be open to another Arsenal all or nothing doc? I enjoy watching the stuff behind the scenes. Yes and no. I only want it if we want something, but yes, I would be open to it under the right circumstances. I didn't dislike it. I just felt like, it was all for nothing, I'm just joking. But yeah, I'd be still open to it. I love it. Arteta or nothing. We never gonna get the real Dons. West Ham slightly fleeced us on installments wise. Is it outrageous if you have it? Yeah, but Box Fresh, we have it, but we have a budget for the rest of the window. So if the idea is that, like, let's say we have 150 million to spend, right? And we want to do just give, I don't know, we're going to break down the Zubamendi payments. So we're going to pay them 20 million up front. We're paying, we're trying to get Eze. We're going to pay this amount up front. We know Real Madrid is going to want this amount up front. We got the defender. We got all these things working at the same time. Depending on how much our budget actually is, we may not be able to get certain things if we just do the 80 million up front. I feel like I get what you're saying if we have it, but you only really have it if you don't have to spend a bunch of money on other things. Like, we really want to get Eze and Rodrigo. We know those things are going to be a certain amount up front. And to be honest, I feel like we're holding out to make sure that we can actually pay for Rodrigo, so I don't think they're trying to not pay because they're cheap. I think because they have so many things that they want to do, and you're going to have to pay something up front for every single thing. So, you have to make sure that you spend wisely. We don't know what our budget was, but Sky Sports was saying that our budget was above 100 million. Usually when they say that, it's around there, maybe a little bit more. If our budget is actually like around 100 million, you cannot spend 80 million up front, so even at 150 million, that is leaving us quite short, so yes, we do probably have that amount that we can do up front, but then you guys will be complaining that we can't get Rodrigo or Eze can't come in, and so yeah, like I'm looking at it, like, you guys know I'm not good at math, but the Cronkies usually will give us like 150 million to like start off with, something around there. If you pay, the 5 million for Kepa because you paid his release clause, then I don't even know for sure, but we know Zubamendi, we're breaking it down into payments, 20 million for that. To break it down into the payments, you're going to have to pay 20 million up front for Eze. You're going to pay a significant amount for Rodrigo. You're not going to get to pay nothing for that. Let's say it ends up being 70 million, but let's just be conservative and say we could pay 30 million up front. Right now you're at 75 million, you know. So we have to be careful with the money, you know. And Ruox is saying also that, and this is also not taken into consideration what we're still paying off for other things. You know, we don't know how much we're still paying off for Rice or Kai or whoever. So this is what I'm saying. It's, yeah, we may have it, but we need to be careful with the money, you know? And you're saying like if Arsenal went over budget for once in their lifetime, I think they'd have a heart attack. And I kind of get what you're saying, but like most teams have a budget, and I don't think teams that are like spending a whole bunch, that means that they have no budget. They just might have a little bit of a bigger budget than ours. It's just the reality of the situation that we're in. And I don't really understand justifying paying Leipzig more than what we're willing to spend is like justifiable just because we want to get it done. Like then we'll never get low fees. We'll never be able to negotiate because we set a precedent that if you just hold out, Arsenal will overspend. So it won't be overspending once in their life. It'll be overspending all the time. Then you're Manchester United, and no matter what you're trying to do, you have to overspend on Lenny Yoro. You have to overspend on Mbomo. You're getting held over the coals by fucking Brentford for Mbomo, you know? So yeah, I understand what you're saying and just get it done. But it just sets a really bad precedent. And that's just nonsense. 80 something million for Sesko and a lot of it up front is a nonsense. I really think we'll end up spending 285 million this summer. We might get 40 million in player sales max. Gyökeres deal looks more realistic just because he wanted to go and Sesko is younger and he wants to sign a new contract last summer. Hello, Jess. Hello to you as well, Diallo. I'm gonna be real, Diallo. I'm about to get going, so you missed a lot, you know, sorry. But we've been chatting for almost 3 hours now. So unfortunately, like there won't be that much show like live for you. So I'm sorry, you know, but we did go live a little bit earlier today. I'd get a 5-finger discount at a Stanbury and keep the change. Sesko is an amazing prospect, but it's not worth overspending for him with all the repercussions. We have to be smart. To be fair, the summer going into 23-24, the money was given but poorly spent, and now we are paying the consequences. Josh is absolutely correct there. 100% correct. Did not like that is spot on. That, you know, we spent 100 million on Rice. I do not regret that at all. We spent the money on Timber. We spent the money on Raya, but that 65 million, oh boy. If you had to pick between Yildiz or Akliush, I mean, that's a really difficult one. I really like Yildiz. I think Yildiz actually fixes our problems a lot more than Akliush, funnily enough, because Yildiz is somebody that can play left wing and plays 10. So probably Yildiz, but that does not, like, I want it to be made absolutely clear. I love Akliush, and I would be devastated if he ended up anywhere other than Arsenal. And I know he probably will. So I just want to put that out there. Honestly, if we do Brokey gimmick and proceed to spend 50 million on Maduki, I'm gonna crash out so hard. And see, the reason why we'll end up doing a Madweki type of situation is Chelsea will give us great terms. They don't care about getting a lot of money up front. They get so many sales that they're not like under duress to have to sell big. They get like a bunch of small sales across Europe for their, you know, for their other players that are out on loan, and then players from their academy, and then, you know, players that they sell. So they're never under duress to get, you know, a bunch of money up front. They just want to make sure that they sell. So I think they give Arsenal really good terms, and that's why the deals go through fast. You know, Jorginho and Kai went through fast because we could break it down into 20 payments. And so if we do end up getting Madueke, it's probably not because we want him more than Akliush. It's probably just because AS Monaco probably need more money to reinvest, so they'll want more up front. Arsenal will want to pay more in installments. I think that's why we deal with Chelsea. You know, I think we deal with Chelsea because they give us better terms than other people. So that summer was a clear message from the owner saying, "This is it. Go and do something." But Mikel or whoever was in charge got carried away. If we spend £1 more than 25 million on Madueke, it was a bad decision. He is a Marino level player. Goodness. We'll take Madwecki, 20 million, no more. They said Goosebumps, Maduki, generational banter name. There's been so many good ones that have been made up recently. Squirt, beef jerky, or two of them. Zubamindi has one too, but I can't remember what it is. And now, like, I mean, Maduki is a good one. Booty Ashiel, Disaster, um, uh, Con Artist is a really good one as well. I love them. I want the guy who wants a simple. I've changed my mind. I like that. If we spend a pound more, I know I read that one. And Matteo Redighi and Sam Steigen is cheaper than Eze and Benjamin Sesko. I don't know who Sam Steigen is, but I know you said that yesterday. Our terrorist always gets me. And I think it's the drama, goosebumps they were talking about. Yeah, I mean, this is just a lot. But, I want to give Berta, the benefit of the doubt because we've never, we've um this is his first summer and he seems to be trying to go big and he's put us in a good place to get, you know, both Rodrigo and Eze. And I can't say that I feel like this is wait, hold on. Oh shit. Okay. Um, but I'm gonna read this out in a second, but the way that these deals have gone about, that's not really a Berta problem, is it? It's neither one of RB Leipzig or Sporting have held to what the original valuation or the original fee was going to be. And so now we're holding firm, and that's what we should do. So Team News and Ticks also said that today I was told that Arsenal spoke to Ollie Watkins again and said hold fire on any deal. He would be third choice, but with the first two looking difficult, it's not a third choice that's miles away. Watkins is an Arsenal fan. It would love to play for them. Oh, this is gonna happen, isn't it? I can't even. I know I'm not even gonna be able to bring myself to even watch an Ollie Watkins comp because I know it's dead. This is fucking happening. You just know it is, don't you? Rebuke it is so funny. That Watkins Bomba is gonna send me. It's just gonna send me into the next stratosphere. The despair. It's dark. Yesterday, it was Sesko, Rodrigo, and Eze. Today, it's Ollie fucking Watkins. I can't even conjure up like a, like he's not that bad. Like I can't even conjure it. I can't even conjure it. Leipzig, you will pay for your crimes. I hope we get, well, we won't even get you in the Champions League, you bitch. God, I'm so pissed. That's football for you. Ollie Watkins, number 14. Come on. Comma justice not happening. It better not. Watkins, Rodrigo, Eze, Simmons, Ed, not bad. We're not dealing with fucking RB Leipzig. They're not dealing with them. Like, they're nuts. They're nuts. I rate Ollie, to be honest. This is Arsenal. Thinking Madueke as a signing this window is a sackable action. Arsenal are enough. We are enough with these Chelsea rejects. The top dollar with phase 99. Pain is real. It won't happen. They'll never agree the fee. He said it. He said that right now. Hand of Arsenal, please save us. We need an exclusive from you and you only for the striker. I only trust you now. Team News and Ticks is a liar. He didn't tweet that right now, though. He would usually, if he thinks something is coming out and it's not right, he'll rubbish it. I'm sick. I'm sick. I'm sick. Imagine playing 60,000,000. I'm not saying 100% that's the fee, but imagine 60,000,000 for Ollie Watkins at 30. Do you know how sick I'll be? Like, I'm not gonna be nice. He retweeted it like 30 minutes ago. Okay, maybe he's like, "Bitch, you lying," you know? Maybe he did retweet it. He knew. He knew to retweet that to help. Team News and Ticks, you will perish because you are lying. Hand of Arsenal is like, "Nah, bro." But I need an exclusive from you. What's going on? I need some information because the last one that he put out there was very bleak. It was like very like not. He said a striker update soon, and then he added context and said it's gone silent. Arsenal been in talks for like 2 years now. Um, Personal terms are not agreed, but it won't be an issue. The player has personally told Arteta he's ready to lead the line. They're in advanced talks with their new coach and also want to plan their own summer transfer window. Briefing journalists to sensationalize these talks, he has further briefed them over the weekend about Leipzig being calm. When they are far, they're posturing. I can tell you this firsthand. They intentionally leaked the Saudi interest. Is spot on about the two clubs from Saudi. Yeah, I know, but like this was like the last update that he put up there was on the 10th. It's July It's July 2nd now. So, I mean, that was like 20 days ago, over 2 weeks ago, and he's not updated beyond that. We need an update, babe. We need an update because what's going on? I'm ill. The smell of "Here we go, Ollie Watkins to Arsenal." He always wanted Arsenal. Mikel was a big admirer of him. 40,000,000 for the England international. It can't be. It's not gonna happen. Guys, let's be honest. We all know Watkins is a real target. Gunnerblog's been saying that for months. Um, I mean, listen, the he is a real target because even Hand of Arsenal tweeted about it. Like he's on the list, so there's no way that we can be like, well, we would never sign Ollie Watkins. We fucking tried to like a couple months ago, so of course we'd sign Ollie Watkins. I just don't want us to. It's dark. RB Leipzig, you will perish. You will pay for your sins. This was supposed to be so easy. Remember, we kept good relations. Like, are they okay? Like, this is a never do business with you again. This is never do business with you again. Like, this is if you ever want a player from us, you can kick rocks. Like, seriously. I would never deal with them again after this. If this ends up meaning Ollie Watkins, count your days. But he said Ollie Watkins is a failsafe, so we'll see. It's weird that Hand of Arsenal hasn't spoken about any strikers. He spoke about it 20 days ago, so it's been a while. Things could have changed, but come on. You're going to see the best of me. You guys stop. Stop right now. Seriously. Do not do the gonna see the best of me. Ollie Watkins being like washed at our club would kill me. Nah, this is Slimy Agent for advising Sesko. Um, why do you not want Watkins? He'll score 15 goals minimum in our system and would be a cheaper alternative that would allow us to get Eze and a left wing. Because he's feels like settling, honestly. I feel like that there's players that we've gotten recently in recent times that we've had kind of like similar feelings about. You know, they weren't the number one option, they were second or third choice, and we ended up getting them. And of course, like it's not like they're bad players. Ollie Watkins is not shit. You know, I don't think Ollie Watkins is a bad player. I don't not rate Ollie Watkins. I would have taken him in January. My problem is that you know, we've been waiting so long to get the guy, and now we're going to get another second, third option, second tier, third option, and it just pushes the can down the road. I don't think anybody could say with certainty that he's the guy that's going to lead the line for us to win the league. Um, and it's just disappointing, you know. So I think I think, you know what it is? I think we've done this so many times with so many different targets and stuff like that. Meant to get Rafinha, don't get Rafinha. Meant to get Mudryk, he failed, but meant to get Mudryk, we don't get Mudryk. We get Trossard. I love Trossard down. You guys know this is a Trossard friendly channel, but he was a backup option. You know, didn't get Caicedo, ends up with Jorginho. Love Jorginho. He definitely proved me wrong in terms of his usefulness, but he was a backup option. You know, it's how many times are we not going to end up with the option that we were first given to us, I guess, you know? So, you know, Declan Rice, that's a great signing. That was like a number one option. We're getting Zuby, which was originally the number one option when we started looking for this particular position again. You know, if we get Rodrigo, that's fantastic. But we're talking about the attack now. We have to get it spot on. We've been waiting for a long time. We've actually like went way too long without addressing it. And so to go get like another Trossard type signing again, when you meant to be getting the guy, it's like I think that's what it is. It's more disappointing. It's not that I don't rate Ollie Watkins. I think he's a good player, you know, but like, man, you know, would be even worse if we got Watkins saving money for Rodrigo and then Rodrigo doesn't come. That would be the ultimate typical Arsenal transfer window. That cannot happen. Surely we push for Gyökeres if RB are trying to put their hand up our skirt. No, it just depends, I guess, on what kind of bullshit they're on, because I think they're on bullshit as well. You know, Gyökeres is going. Do you guys realize, like, we're sitting here right now, Gyökeres is in hell. We're talking, and Gyökeres is like in an existential crisis about his career. He is behind bars at Sporting Lisbon, you know, so unless they've changed their tune, they're also, you know, we're also still in the same situation. I'm not for Watkins, but realistically, he might outscore Sesko next season. Would prefer Sesko long term, though. Jess, what if we are aiming for Isak next season and Watkins is a stopgap? Would you take it? This whole Isak. When will we let go? You know, when will we we'll never let go, will we? Like, as a fan base, we are absolutely obsessed with this one player. So much so that I think that people have built up in their mind that like at some stage he will end up at Arsenal. Like it's only a matter of time. Like everything is working together in the universe to make sure that this player ends up at our club. I want to get a different player. I want our own Isak. I want to build have our own player. Like he is a Newcastle player as of now. He will probably be a Newcastle player as of the next couple of years. And there's no, I mean, if he goes anywhere, maybe he ends up at Liverpool. I don't know. But is there no way that we can just get our own player and make our own striker and have our own Isak? You know, why do we have to go get him? You know, I'm done with the Isak thing. I just feel like, not that it wouldn't seem like a sideways step to us and maybe not to him, but it's just, we're not enough of a bump, I think, to really move the needle right now. And financially, it's an obstacle. It's just a lot. They're in Champions League, we're in Champions League. If they had not made Champions League, it'd be different. He'd be on the market. I think he'd be pushing a lot more, but they put like this really big price tag on him, and it's just, there's a lot going on there. So personally, I think the boat has really like it has sailed, so it's up to Arsenal to find who is the next Isak out there that we can go get. I thought that was going to be Sesko. This is like our Sesko moment. Go out there, spend the 60 million on him, and maybe he's not perfect the first year, but he is going to bang eventually. And RB Leipzig are playing games. They are playing games, and you know what? In the words of Hussam, I'm playing on your downfall. If I end up with Ollie Watkins at the end of this window, count your days. Count your days. Leipzig. I'm going to be knocking on Klopp's door like, did you do this? Is this you? Is this you? Is this what you did? Okay. I respected you. I liked you. I backed you. When people were calling you a fraud and saying you're only winning one Premier League, I said, no. It was tough. No, it was tough. I had your back. You built a great team. You were just as good as Pep. You just didn't have the tools. And never again. Never again. I will never defend you again. O'Malley said, Arsenal know how to kill fan hype, from the Ashburn Army to the Tifo to the delayed Zubamendi announcement to keeping the powder dry for an underwhelming striker. Please get it right for once. I think we talked about this. Thank you so much for your super chat. They don't care about fan hype or fun at all. They don't care about that. That Tifo, they thought that was a good idea. They're out of, I would say Arsenal are out of touch. I don't think they really know what we want. The Tifo was stank. It really was. They don't have a clue. Arsenal, if they were really clued in on Arsenal, they would, going with the recipes. They'd be getting young, exciting players and, building a lot of attackers. They have the vibes, streets, all that kind of stuff. They kind of are kind of stripping the recipes away. They don't care. So they're not worried that what it looks like to us. They're not listening to us. They don't care. They're they will go get more Chelsea players. They don't care that it kills our soul that every time we buy a Chelsea player, it funds them for a better player. They don't care about that kind of stuff. They are not clued in. They are not in the know. They do not care. They're very out of touch, so they're not worried about, oh, well, we can't get Sesko. The fan base is upset. Let's, Ollie Watkins should be fine. They don't care about that. He fits their budget. Arteta likes him. He's English and Prem proven, and he's an Arsenal fan. That's all that they care about, So I get it. I share your sentiment in terms of please get it right for once, but Arsenal do not care about what we think. As long as we're not riding, they're it's fine. They don't care at all. They are so out of touch at what we want, so yeah, nobody thought that Tifo was a good idea. They were waiting for the fan design one from Ashburn Army and got delivered some crappy AI slop. They bailed and went with the existing basic design. Is that really what happened? That's fucking crazy. Because that was not good. Klopp has either gone RB selling them for some BS about getting Coutinho money for Sesko, or we did something serious to upset him while he's at Liverpool. City stole your titles, man, not us. Is he up? I'm is he really up there pulling the strings for real? Because if so, I will never defend you again, ever in life. You are an mortal enemy for the rest of our lives. This is just the thing that's happening with Sesko is just nonsense. But yeah, I just, not Ollie, but I'm holding out hope that head of Arsenal is going to come out with something, something positive, something, at least clarifies where we sit, because I think it'd be disappointing to skip over Gyökeres altogether and not at least try to deal with that a little bit more before we get to the third option. But Arteta wants a striker in before preseason starts, and it starts in 2 weeks, so Yeah. Ironically, Vinay was the one clued in on the fan base stuff. He was the one responsible for the stadium artwork. 60 million for Watkins, no please. Ornstein is waiting for you to end the show and drop the bomba. Do not drop it. Just I'd rather just nothing happen and we just see him on, in the preseason and we're just like, oh, because I already see the fan base is already like, it's fine. We'll just, Watkins is fine. Like, what are you guys upset about? And I'm just like, if you can't understand why people would not want Ollie Watkins at this stage, fair. I get it. You don't want to see, and of course I'll support him and I won't be against him or anything. Like, it's not like I'm going to be preying on his downfall or, anything if he does sign for the club, I'll be hoping that he, scores lots of goals, but some signings are just not signings that we should be doing. 60 million was the opening position from Villa in January when they were in CL. Didn't need to sell and weren't in as much PSR trouble. Ballpark's 40 million is more realistic final price. Klopp is the head of global football for Red Bull. Watkins or nothing. I choose Watkins. I mean, yeah, Watkins or nothing. Absolutely. Like, that's the thing, though. It's like Ben Arfa. Watkins or nothing. Of course, I'm going to bring in Watkins or nothing, but I shouldn't be choosing between those two things, at this stage. I don't think any Arsenal fan, um, I don't think any Arsenal fan outside of like maybe a couple would choose nothing, of course, but I shouldn't be choosing between, I shouldn't be choosing between, eating a cup of noodle or starving for 12 days. It's like that's the equivalent. It's like, well, I guess I'll eat this cup. Well, it's not a really good example because I love cup of noodle, but you know what I mean? Like an average meal, like you better eat this cup of noodle. Like you gonna starve? It's like, yeah, because I was starved for the 12 days, but damn, could I get actual like salmon and some rice? Like, can I get some tacos? Like, come on. Diallo, thank you so much for your super chat. Says, give up on Isak. He's friend zoned us. Give up. He's basically signed up to be our tormentor for the foreseeable. So, it is what it is. Watkins is no better than Kai. Saw Watkins from a mile away. Big AFC accounts and media will say other strikers were overpriced and not value for money. I see top goons showing us pie charts and XG diagrams already. Not gonna lie, this is nasty work. Ollie's ain't that bad. Fair enough. I don't think anybody is saying that he's like, well, I'm saying for sure, I'm not saying he's that bad, but he's just not what you want to hear after the last couple of windows, and if that makes sense, not getting attackers suffering the way that we've been suffering without real like you know, clinical attackers. I think when you go from Jokeris, Sesko to Watkins, it's just a little bit, it's a little difficult to take, that's all. He's not an elite striker, that's a deal that's very Arsenal, isn't it? We are so shameless as a club. Start with Isak at the end of the season, end up with Watkins. I mean, what is the level of Watkins, though? I think like, we have high quality prospect. We have, just above the like below the elite guys. Like I think Jokeris is like below like I know he scored more goals than them, but like I don't think we actually believe that Jokeris is better than Kane or Lewandowski. So you have like the Kanes and the Lewandowskis and, maybe the Isaks, and then you have like the Jokeris type striker. I forgot Holland as well. Like Holland, Lewandowski, Kane, and then you have like Jokeris and like that next level down, like really, really good, but like not elite. And then what's like where is Ollie Watkins sitting in that? Because I mean, he basically lost his spot to John Duran and Rashford at the end of the season. So he's not even really a starter for Aston Villa anymore, or wasn't at the end of the season. So that's why I'm trying to like, what's the level? Are we talking about just like average, good? Like, is this on the same level as like a Norgard type signing? Because Norgard was a good standard Premier League player that's going to be a backup. what is Ollie Watkins? What is his level? Is he better than Solanke? Where does he sit? Is he better than Delap? Like, because I'm just like, you know, what is his level? I'm not quite sure where to put him. I'm putting Watkins in the level slightly below Jokeris. He'll score 4 out of 10 chances. Isak was never a reality though, right? That was a dream in our own minds. Exactly. Arsenal people, Kane over Watkins. What you guys think? Kane is much better than like Kane. We can be honest about Kane now because he doesn't play for the ops. Kane is like the perfect template of a striker. He creates, he's good technically, he smashes the ball, he's good at penalties. Even though he's not at his physical peak anymore, he's still better than almost everybody, still top 1%. Kane and Watkins are not even in the same stratosphere. They're not in the same stratosphere. They're not in the same conversation. Kane is up there with the Lewandowskis and the Hollands and those guys. Watkins is definitely in a level below there. I just don't know what level because I'm not sure that I believe Ollie Watkins is on the same level as Gyökeres. So I want to almost put him on the level just below it. So yeah, if Liverpool, City, Chelsea, and United all make major signings and we hardly move the needle with ours at the end of the window, I would lose it. I can't say nice things about Kane. Still, definitely can't do it. I'm pretty sure we're not signing Watkins if we're not signing Sesko. I think we will sign Victor, and most news that come out today seems to point that way. Let's see. Watkins is a stopgap for 2 years until we find the next Sesko. Striker market absolutely stinks. And in the biggest matches of Villa seasons, Watkins didn't start. I mean, yeah, very, very interesting times we're in, but I'm holding on to, the hope that we don't end up stooping down to the Ollie Watkins thing. Um, I'm still optimistic about Eze plus Rodrigo. I don't think those things have changed, but I do think the striker situation is proving itself to be a lot more difficult than it was meant to be. And I don't think that that's like an Arsenal thing. I don't think it's a Berta thing. I just think RB Leipzig and Sporting have been on bullshit. They have not upheld the gentleman's agreement, and we don't want to overspend because we have so much other things to do, which I completely understand. But they need to secure a striker of a certain level, or it's going to feel as though we've still missed the mark. The striker is the most important, if not one of the top 2 important things to get done. So we've got to get it right. How we passed from Rodrigo, Sesko, and Gyökeres to Watkins and Madueke. I don't think we have passed that, though. I want to be very clear that it's Rodrigo and Eze and Madueke is being put into conversations, but there's nothing there. I mean, Hand of Arsenal said that he doesn't want to play behind Saka and he doesn't want to play left wing. And they also, Ben Jacobs was saying that they want 45 million plus for Madueke. I do genuinely feel like people are taking advantage of very basic interest from Arsenal and Madueke and putting it out there to make us freak out. The number one option that we have for the third attacking option is Eze. So I don't think it's Watkins and Madueke. It's still Rodrigo, Eze, and a striker. We just need to figure out what the striker is. Rodrigo, Eze, Odegaard, Saka, MLS, Zubi pulling the strings. I think we're overthinking this. Just need a 9 ready to bench Kai before the festive period. While all of a sudden the focus on Watkins, just because, Team News and Ticks has said that in the last couple of hours we've spoken to Ollie Watkins. Oh, we got a Fabrizio update. Arsenal and Brentford have exchanged all the paperwork for Christian Norgard deal. The Danish midfielder will join Arteta's squad as expected. So that wasn't quite done. So now it's pretty much done now. So yeah, but I think TNT News and Ticks is washed. So that's why the focus is on Watkins now, is because he was saying that we've talked to Watkins in the last couple hours and to hold any deal because we're stalling on Sesko and Gyökeres. So yeah. And like, here's the thing is, I don't know how much Frankfurt want for Ekitike, but I'd almost like depending on because I know that if the fee is exactly the same, that doesn't mean that it's the same deal. You can both teams can want 80 million for their striker, but if Frankfurt are willing to take good installments, meaning that we could pay like 10 million or 20 million up front and break that 80 million down in installments, then I would prefer to do Ekatike instead, than fall down to Ollie Watkins. Of course, Ekatike is not my perfect option, but he's just a much more high kind of like level talent than Ollie Watkins at 30. Um, so I don't think maybe they are asking for a lot more up front. I have to go look at the Ekatike situation and do some digging, but because people were put off by the fee that they wanted, and maybe they want a lot up front. But I would definitely explore that first before I go to Ollie Watkins, you know. Um, so yeah. But listen, you guys, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here because I haven't eaten and we've been on here for 3 hours. So yeah, but I've enjoyed myself. Thank you so much for the people that super chatted, regular chats. I really am excited about this, but by this, like these daily streams. I've really enjoyed them. They become a really important part of my life again. And so I love this community and I love you guys to death. I know we it's difficult right now because nothing is really set in stone, but I'm hoping that we have some really good moments during this transfer window to get on these streams and get excited, so I'm holding out hope for that, hoping out hope for Eze and Rodrigo and a good striker. There's a committee announcement maybe tomorrow. So we go again. Make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel on the way out, and I'll be getting me a cup of noodle because that sounded good earlier. Talk to you guys soon. Bye, guys.